We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I am sick. You're going to hear it in my voice. But hey, better that I'm here and sick than not here at all, right?
No. Get somebody to replace you. You should be... This is too... No. You shouldn't be here. You should be...
It's going to be a little scratchy, going to be a little weak. That's how it's going to
be.
be.
Take the night off. No one's gonna hate you if you take the night off.
I already took yesterday off. I didn't get the topic list finished, so...
Well, that's not...
Making up
That's
for
neither here nor there. You should just take the... We could skip this week.
Oh, yeah.
A week.
With the amount of questions we have,
I don't care about that. We could always make it up later. It's not that big of a deal. You're sick. You didn't tell me you were sick, or I had realized it before. Literally just that second, I would have scratched the podcast.
I'm not dying. I don't even have a fever. It's just it's in my throat. We'll be all right. People will survive, including me. So, my wife and I bought a new couch over Black Friday or something. Whatever. Okay.
We went someplace on Black Friday and bought a couch. It wasn't like a Black Friday sale. There may have been a sale that was going on, but that's not why we went there. We went there because it was convenient at the time. So, in preparation for this couch coming into this room, I realized I needed to screw some speakers into the ceiling so that the drywall didn't fall into the brand new couch with my wife staring at me like the daggers.
Good idea.
I put them up there. They are there. And there is speaker wire coming out of them. So the Focal birds is what I've got, right?
Correct. Yep. You got the Focal birds.
They are fairly easy. Like I don't read instructions, so they're fairly easy to figure out what to do with them. There's parts of them I like, and parts of them so far I don't. So there's a round base.
Yes.
Then that one you can put 2 screws into it to glue it to whatever you're going to do it to. You can. This can be done, but it's more of a speaker stand. Really. Yeah. And then there's a 3-prong one. The 3-prong one, it's actually not up and down. Like the little pole thing is angled back a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like a tripod, like a teeny tiny little tripod.
It is, but the pole doesn't come straight up off the thing. It's actually angled to one side.
Okay.
So you have to pay attention to that when you're putting them in. Then there's these little so at the end of the tripod, there at each end there you can put a screw into each one of those, and they give you drywall anchors in case you need them.
Yeah.
And then there's covers that go on top of them afterwards to cover them up. Out of both the tripods, out of 3 of the covers, 2 of them on both of them went back on, secured nice and whatever, and one of them just fell right off.
Okay.
Like it would not go back on after I took it off. Then they're on the back side of it. There's sort of this, I don't know what they call it, a vanity plate, but basically it just covers up all the workings and it's magnetic. Did not secure enough for me. Like the magnets weren't holding it secure enough. One of the magnet came completely out, kind of weird. But I was like, this is gonna rattle. It's gonna rattle. Just take it out now. So you can't see it anyways when it's on the ceiling. And I think in 90% of the applications that you're going to be using these things in, you won't see this back thing anyways. So not a huge deal for me, but it was kind of a little.
Yeah, it's a little fit and finish, not so great. All right.
Yeah, but as far as positioning, and then there's like an Allen wrench that you use to tighten it down, man, you can really get these things exactly where you want them to be. So I didn't do the best job in positioning one of them because of how, it wasn't really super convenient. So one is right at the end of the couch, and one's sort of like I would have liked it to have been a little bit more to the edge, but basically they're in line pretty close. They're about as far away from my main speakers from each other as they, from each other, so if you look at the main speakers, they are on the outside of the speakers a little bit.
Okay.
But the couch is a little bit shifted to one side. So if I centered them I kind of wanted to center them so that they were on the couch, on either end of the couch, but I couldn't really do it because of where things were on the ceiling. So close enough, whatever.
And
I'll
you
play
can't
around
aim
with it.
them, so at least
I can. I've got some options. So they've got speaker wire hanging out of them, and that's as far as I got.
Okay.
I
haven't
need to
heard them
secure
yet, but there you go.
No, they're on the ceiling, and the speaker wire is connected. I just have to connect it back to the receiver, but I ran out of time. I just flat out ran out of time. So, in progress. In progress.
All right.
And Austin has assured us that he is working diligently on the video, and things are going well.
Yep.
So, almost done, I think, is what he kind of said. Kind of indicated he was
yeah,
50%.
as far as actually, like, shooting the video, measuring them, all that type of stuff, then he'll have to put together the video after that. So
Right.
what the actual finished product might still be a ways away, but yeah, SVS is kind of wondering where their $5,000 worth of subs are, so that's that should be getting shipped back to them before Christmas.
That's the thought. All right. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I would like to get it done before Christmas because I think it'll be a good tool for SVS as well. So this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Someone did that recently.
Oh, shoot. I didn't check that. Oh, well. We'll get you next week if it was there.
We'll get you next week, whoever you are. I did notice you. I did. Let me see here. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/C/AVRant. If you want to reach us directly, Rob is Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. We talk about our producer, Austin. He usually helps with the podcast questions. This week, he was way too busy with the video, so we're going to give him a little bit of a pass on that.
It's understood.
But he has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about herbal remedies for throat soreness.
Yep.
They are not big believers in the honey and lemon, believe it or not. The hot water with honey and lemon. They don't. They do believe, and I don't think they have much empirical evidence, but whatever. Gargling salt water.
Yeah.
Gargling salt
another
water.
one. See, I just like to drink fizzy things, carbonated things, because it's a little bit like pushing on a bruise. You know, it hurts extra bad, and then the pain kind of goes away.
Absolutely honest with you. Whenever my throat hurts, all I want to do is drink orange juice until I do, and I want to stop immediately drinking orange juice. But in my head, when I'm sick, especially if I'm feverish, I remember when I was a kid, I was in high school, I had like an abscess, which is sort of like a boil in my throat, and my fever was off the freaking charts. Like, it was bad enough where the doctor was like, if his fever doesn't break and this thing doesn't stop going down in the next 24 hours, he's getting admitted to the hospital. We are lancing that thing. And I was like, I don't want to have it lanced. I don't know what that is, but that sounds awful. And he's like, it is exactly as awful as you think it is. That night, my fever was so bad, I hallucinated all night long. Had these nightmares and every time all my nightmares were asking my father or whoever came into the room for a glass of orange juice. And then after this long night of this recurring dream over and over again, when I finally got the orange juice, I would wake up enough to realize I was hallucinating / dreaming or whatever. I'd fall back into the next iteration of this. The next morning when my dad came in, I was like, can I have some orange juice, please? And he brought me orange juice. And I was like, is this real? And he's like, you're being very strange right now. I'm like, okay. I drank it. He goes, I don't understand why you want orange juice. That's really good. I was like, oh, it's awful. It hurts.
Yup.
He was like, do you want something else to drink? I'm like, yes, take this away. This is terrible. I don't know why I was thinking this all night. Oh, it was awful. Anywho, let's get started today. And we always like to start with thanking our supporters of this podcast. And this week, some of our listeners of the week are Tyson and Lawrence. Tyson and Lawrence went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and left us a PayPal donation. Those monies go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other such things, which may include whatever surgery Rob needs for his throat.
Jeez. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you, Lawrence. And I'm fine. Just little scratch.
He says that now until he starts to get a goiter. Is that called goiter?
That's not related to a. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you'll get one.
Sick.
You could. We also want to thank our patrons. They have gone to patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. I can't remember.
Correct. AVRant Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they clicked. They became one of our patrons. Our patrons are people who have signed up at Patreon.com to donate a set amount of money per month. And I think the minimum is $1, and the maximum is, for me, it would probably
Sky's
be
the
about
limit.
5. I think I'd top out at 5. But you guys do as we're gonna do. And so far, right now, we have 36 patrons, which is up from 33. And Andy was specifically mentioned that he was one of our patrons. So we want to thank Andy and all of our 36 patrons.
Yeah, thanks to Andy, and thank you so much to all of our 36 patrons. I really appreciate that.
Now, if you can't support the podcast financially, which we completely understand, anything else you can do, we always appreciate. We want to thank Tim and Mark for alerting us on Twitter when our RSS feed stopped working. It stopped working because our bandwidth had been exceeded on our website yet again. Now, the last time it was exceeded, I could not get it fixed because my server guy, who was Clint, was on a cruise, so I could not call him and say fix it. This time I called him and he fixed it. So no one knows why this is happening. Clint can't figure it out.
Yeah, we were told to use the Google Analytics. I don't know if anybody's tried that. I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do either. Clint and I've looked at it numerous times over the years because it's happened numerous times over the years, and he just keeps bumping the limit up, and then eventually we hit it again. So I don't really know what's going on with that, but I figure it's a good problem, or maybe somebody's got backdoored into our website and is hosting porn. I don't know, but hopefully not that second thing. So thank you guys for letting us know. Rob Z got a SVS PB12 NSD subwoofer during their sale. He sent them an email letting them know he heard about them from us. I'm going to get this out. He also got a Denon X3300W from Accessories for Less and let them know that was because of us. I guess we also mentioned that he donated twice in 1 week a few weeks back, and he wanted to say that he got the idea from another listener who said that they gather up any partially used gift cards and donate the remainder balances to us. He had 2 gift cards, and those became 2 donations. Finally, he went through a tough time this past summer, and listening to AVRant helped him through, as though we were keeping him company. So he wanted to thank us for that. So that was a long one, but thank you, Rob, for all of the things.
Yeah, and I wanted to say I felt the same way when I was going through some, all the family health things that have been going on. Same thing. Listening to podcasts has been a help because, you get to listen to things you're enjoying, hear voices that are familiar. So appreciate that, Rob. And we won't go into any details that were mentioned about that, but Tom and I can absolutely sympathize. If you've listened to all the podcasts, we can totally sympathize. So.
And when Rob's going through his chemo for his throat cancer, we will
as if it's that bad.
Whatever my next podcast co-host will be, we'll keep you company, Rob, as you're unable to speak because of all the radiation. All right, Ryan mentioned us to Accessories for Less when you ordered his Denon AVR X3300W, and Larry bought a pair of SVS SB12 NSD subs during their sale and emailed Gary Yakubian directly to let him know it was thanks to us. So thank you, Larry, Ryan, Rob, Tim, and Mark.
I'll go opposite direction. Tim and Mark, Rob, Ryan, Larry, thank you all so much for talking us up to those retailers.
All right, in the news, SVS launched, everybody knows this, their new 4000 series subs. These replace the 13 Ultra series and adopt the new features that were introduced with the 16 Ultra series. So now they have a front panel display. They can be controlled using a smartphone app or the included remote. They also have a considerably more powerful DSP processor, and the amplifier power and 13.5-inch drivers were given a spec bump as well. The price on the PC 4000 cylinder went up by $100 over the PC 13 Ultra, but it now includes the sound path isolation feat and an upgraded look. So the SB and PB models, the black ash finish went down in price by $100, and the piano black finished price stays the same. So one of our listeners, Nathan, got to hear one of the demos, and he says they had no problems filling even a large showroom. So you can check those out at svssound.com/pages/4000- series. So check those
Yeah.
out over there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, the 13 Ultra series was great. I have PC 13 Ultras. I don't expect that if you had 13 Ultras that going to the 4000 series would be some massive difference, but the features, having that front panel display, being able to control it with a smartphone app, that type of stuff, very convenient for your setup. Really nice to see that the prices didn't go up. The cylinder went up a bit, but you get the isolation feet now. But the other ones, I mean, the black ash finish going down by $100. Can't complain about that. New features, spec bump, and the price went down. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. So lastly, the final HDMI 2.1 specification was released, but as Blue Jean Cables wrote in the article, the compliance testing hasn't been finalized yet. Yeah, they're starting to talk about 10K.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 10K resolution. I really, so if you come to avrant.com, we'll have show notes for the episode. You can find the links for the things that we talk about. I really want to encourage everyone to read that Blue Jeans Cable article, because there is so much misinformation out there about this stuff, about HDMI 2.1. You know, the compliance testing doesn't even exist yet. So if you're looking at a cable that says, oh, yeah, we're 48 gigabits per second and we're HDMI 2.1, they're like, no, you can't be. The compliance doesn't even exist yet. There's no way you can possibly make that claim because you don't even know the targets you're supposed to be hitting. So, yeah, really good article. Please check that out.
Yeah, I like how he's like, for compatibility, they're like, we don't know. We have no idea.
We don't know if our existing
we don't know if the cables that you bought from us will work or won't. We have no clue.
There's going to be a whole new category. Officially it's called Category 3 because Category 1 was standard speed, Category 2 was high speed, and now there's going to be a Category 3, which HDMI is officially calling 48G. That's the name they're using for it. So, yeah.
Can I just once again express my absolute bottomless hatred for the whole HDMI consortium, like all of it. Like I don't think you're bad people if you're a member of this and but can you please invite just a regular person into the room? I don't care who it is. Pick one. Just go on the street and say, dude, I will buy you lunch if you come in here and just tell us what you think about what we're talking about. And if they're like, nothing of what you just said made sense, you should stop and figure out if you just picked a stupid person, or more likely, what you're saying is just not logical. Because that seems to be what comes out of these things. They're like, we had perfectly good cables. We had them, right? We had no business switching to HDMI. We could have done this with other cables, but you decided to do this. Fine. Why did you make such a cable that was so stupid? And now we're stuck with this thing. We're stuck with this thing that I don't think, I think it's actually long past hit its ability to function. As a cable, as a viable solution for the amount of data you're trying to push through it. And now we're looking at workarounds.
Yeah.
Why? Why are we looking for workarounds? You guys should have thought about this at the very beginning. Like, why is this cable so overly complicated when all you really need to do, fiber optic, and you're done?
By the way, if you want that eARC feature, the enhanced audio return channel feature, the cable actually has to be an HDMI with Ethernet cable, which really hasn't been utilized for anything else, but now you need it. So there you go. Fun little factoid.
Let's got a couple of comments here. Jeb previously asked us to make hypothetical 55-inch OLED versus 65-inch LCD decision. We mentioned how a 75-inch Vizio M series could be an option just in terms of similar pricing. He settled on a 70-inch, so it wasn't hypothetical, a 70-inch Vizio M series, and he thinks it looks fantastic. Not quite as amazing as an OLED, but the OLED would have been too small, which we all agree on. Joe got a door for under $100 from Home Depot. So that's one less person we have to bug about installing a door. So you can see what the door looks like, excuse me, as it's getting installed.
That's right.
Just like that. That right there.
Door.
$100. You're going to want to fill in that little gap on the side. I am going to throw that out there. But, other than that, just going to say.
Obviously, they framed it.
Mark wanted to share some good news regarding the customer service he has received from brands we frequently recommend. He bought a 120-inch screen from Elite Screens. After about 6 months, he noticed the screen was separating from the black edging along the bottom. It was a huge bummer to remove the screen, but Elite issued a return authorization right away and sent him a replacement very quickly, no hassle and no cost. He bought a Logitech Harmony hub, but he couldn't find his exact NEC projector model in their database. He emailed their support team, and they managed to add all the correct commands. Mark emailed them out, from work about this. By the time he got home, everything on his hub was working without him having to touch a thing. And lastly, SVS packed a t-shirt for free when he purchased his PP2000. He can't stop talking about how great his subwoofer sounds, so he really enjoyed showing off his theater to his friends and family over Thanksgiving. So that's 3 companies we recommend all the time and 3 good customer service.
Yeah.
Though throwing the t-shirt in, I'll tell you what, I would like a SVS t-shirt. I'm a fan
I think
of
that
t-shirts.
should be doable.
I actually would probably anything I could wear that would I would wear like a hat or something too. So I mean, I don't mind that sort of advertising. I mean, dude, you send me a t-shirt, I'm going to wear it. I'm wearing a St. Petersburg Science Festival t-shirt right now. So that's free advertising for them, right? Everybody go. You just missed it. You have to wait a year. All right. Ian appreciated our discussion about 3 screen sizes last week in his setup. The 2.35:1 setup and smaller 16:9 portion would actually end up being at the same height as where he has the screen now. So the IMAX viewing would just extend the screen lower. He's going to discuss that with Seymour AV, but he figures it should work for him. That was the one that we were worried about. You were worried about it's going to be too high, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
He also
that was my concern. So I'm on board with that now. If that's where your screen is already at and you're just going to be extending it down, that should be fine.
He also thinks it would be a good idea, just for clarity, to mention that we do rewrite people's questions. We don't just read the emails exactly as they're written to us. Sometimes what we read isn't exactly what was meant, at least not in his case. So that occasionally creates confusion. Yeah, that's because nobody proofreads. Like ever.
Well, I mean, it's a huge variance that we get. So in the time that it takes me to read, comprehend, organize, come up with links, get images, all that stuff, I'm like, I may as well just rewrite this thing because
I've gotten emails that were one solid paragraph,
one solid line of text. Yeah, it would
without any punctuation or capitalization.
I do want to apologize. I mean, it's never our intention to misrepresent or to answer the wrong question or to be confusing. The great news is, if that's the case, you write back to us. We're going to respond on the podcast. So that's about. I mean,
that has actually
nobody is
before.
infallible. We're going to make corrections. We'll get your question right one way or another.
And there's 2 things here. First, if we mess it up and you ask and you say, hey, this is what I really meant, we're going to answer that, like you said. And that's happened plenty of times on this podcast. But on top of that, just because the question isn't what you were looking for, there's a very good chance somebody else was looking for it. So, I think that the answering of the question still has validity there, even if it's not the exact question you answered. I don't even know if this is lastly. Yes, it is lastly. Steve wants to weigh in on the 3 screen sizes debate from last week. It wasn't a debate. It was Rob trying to make sense at me and it not working. He's with me. Clearly, you are a rational human being who is probably both handsome and intelligent. He doesn't care if his HDTV is bigger than his CinemaScope movies. That said, he uses a constant image height setup with his 2.35:1 screen. So what he really doesn't care about is the IMAX portions of a handful of movies being bigger than CinemaScope. So
I mean, his HDTV actually is smaller than his CinemaScope. He went to the trouble of installing a 2.35:1 screen, so there's some care apparently on Steve's part.
So as for worrying about subtitles in the lower black bar, the Oppo players have a subtitle position setting that lets you raise them up, and he does make use of that on his 2.35:1 screen.
Yeah, I wanted to address that a little bit, just because. So first of all, obviously not everyone has an Oppo player, so that's not
true.
Going to necessarily work for everyone there, but. Now, about as many movies that have IMAX portions, ones that switch aspect ratios, like Dunkirk will, about as many also have subtitles that are hard encoded onto the image, where it's not actually a separate subtitle track that you can turn on and off. It's just it's there. It's part of the movie. It's not very often. It's usually not, but John Wick had that.
Well, you can look at that.
Shell has that.
What is that? And this is probably not 2.35:1. It's that Russian movie that was sort of like The Matrix, or like Twilight or something, or there was like a Daybreak or something like that.
I'm not sure.
It was sort of a Matrix-y sort of thing, and their subtitles were not just hard coded, but they interacted with what was going on the screen.
Right.
So, I mean, that is something that you couldn't move no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, it was meant to be part of it. That might not be a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio.
But there's
anyway.
also a movie like the most recent Ghostbusters where they actually have stuff that goes outside of the 2.35 to 1 frame to give you a weird 3D effect. So it's like, it's not very often, but there are some things where it's in a CinemaScope format, but there's something in those black bars, or it switches to an IMAX thing. Now, if you don't care about any of those particular movies, because they're a small handful, then yeah, 2.35 to 1 screen is absolutely fine. If you happen to care about some of those movies and you're like, I can install the even bigger 16:9, then there you go. It's going to be black bars for the vast majority of the time. But once in a while, when something goes into those upper and lower black bar portions, then you can show it on your gigantic 16:9 screen. That's all.
Yeah. Lastly, is experienced a bit of drift when he uses his projector's lens memory to switch between zoomed in for CinemaScope and zoomed out for HDTV. A click or two on the motorized controls make everything perfectly aligned again, so it's not like a gigantic deal breaker, but it's also not set it and forget it. So that is something to remember, that these things aren't going to be like, you know.
Yeah, a little bit of drift. Yeah, that does make sense. Like I say though, you know, I'd be
Night Watch.
Night Watch.
Night Watch is the name. Is that it? Night What? I think so. I think that's what it's called. All right.
If you're the sort of person who cares about pixel perfect, then that's going to bug you. You're going to want to make that one or two little clicks. If you don't pay so much attention to a little bit of overscan or a little bit of shift, then probably won't bug you too much.
Yeah. Lee. Okay, so we're getting to the questions now. And now our first question is from Lee. Lee heard Josh and Richard from the Entertainment 2.0 podcast talking about the website Real or Fake 4K. They keep track of all the Ultra HD releases and put them into 3 categories: real 4K, nearly 4K, and fake 4K, based on how the movie was shot, edited, and finished. Clearly the focus is just on the image resolution, but the site's own FAQ mentions how HDR and immersive audio might make a bigger difference even if the movie was finished at a 2K and upscaled for the 4K release. So what do we think? Are movies that are finished at 2K and upscaled to 4K fake, or are they rip-off? Is this a big deal? I have not been to this website, and I'm looking at the link right now. I'm not going to click on it. So the reality here is, I don't think this is a deal. There are people who are going to care, but I think that in the end, how it was shot, how it was mastered, and the upscaling or down that part is going to have very little effect on the overall end quality. Perfect example is the Dredd movie. Right, the Dredd movie was shot in whatever the heck it was shot in, but there are some scenes that were clearly shot at a much lower resolution, and there's artifacting that is part of the image. That sort of thing, I don't care if it was initially shot in 4K or not. Whatever they did to that image, or however it became the way that it is, upscaling it or leaving it at 2K or whatever is not gonna change it. The original shot is bad. It's just bad, and you're not going to fix that. A well-shot movie in 2K that's then upscaled, at least in my mind, to 4K. Yeah, it may be not true 4K, but I think that you're not going to notice.
Yeah, to me, the thing that makes Ultra HD Blu-rays Ultra HD, it really is the expanded color and the HDR. That's what I've noticed on my parents' OLED when I'm watching that. I don't notice the resolution. I really don't. You throw on the Blu-ray versus the Ultra HD Blu-ray, I don't notice the resolution, but I notice the expanded color and the HDR. That's what makes the difference. And throw in the fact that some of them have Atmos sound on the Ultra HD Blu-ray, but not on the regular Blu-ray. And I'm like, those are the 3 things that I notice and I care about. The actual resolution, I mean, it could be HDR with the DCI color with 1080p resolution, and I honestly wouldn't care. I mean, I'd be totally fine. Now, maybe when you're blowing it up to a 160-inch image from 10 feet away, that very well might make a bigger difference. Maybe you'll actually notice a bigger difference there. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. I mean, if I'm watching a Blu-ray versus a DVD, yes, I can notice a resolution difference, but the first thing that hits me is the sound. The sound is so much different. The sound is, and that may be completely different mixes, and that could be true, but that's what hits me more than anything. And I think that, you know,
I tend to notice the color too.
Yeah, the color. Yeah. I mean, but it's not like I'm going, oh, this one's blurry. You know, it doesn't look that way most of the time. All right. Dan just got a Marantz SR6011 receivers. Speakers are Pioneer Andrew Jones. The speakers list their impedance as 6 ohms on their spec sheet. And the Marantz manual says that if the speakers are rated at 6 ohms, he should set the receiver's impedance settings to 6 ohms instead of the default 8 ohms. So what should he do? You should leave it at 8 ohms. Now, I know it says 6 ohms. I understand that. But what that really does is it just sort of caps the power of your amplifier, because you're basically telling your amplifier, hey, these might be drawing extra power. Protect yourself just in case. So it sort of sets a limit there. The reality is these are not hard to drive speakers unless you're sitting very far away from them, in which case you got bigger problems. But these are not hard to drive speakers. The 8 ohm setting will be just fine.
Yeah, if you go over to Audioholics, Gene has written about this quite a bit. If you go into your AV receiver's impedance setting and set it to a lower setting, some give you a 6 ohm or some give you a 4 ohm setting. Yeah. When you do that, it essentially puts a current choke on the amplifiers. It prevents them from even delivering the same amount of power that they can when you just leave it in the 8 ohm setting. It just puts a ceiling on it. It says you do not deliver any more current than this. So if you want the full amount of power to get through your receiver, no matter what the ohm rating is on your speakers, you leave the impedance setting inside your AV receiver at 8 ohms. You leave it at the default. The full amount of power goes through. It might get warmer. But in the case of the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, they're a very benign load. Yes, nominally they might be 6 ohms, but they don't dip way down to 2 ohms or something at any point. They're a very easy load still, so just leave it at 8.
Bill continues to refine his plans for his from the ground up house construction. He had a chance to visit Ascend Acoustics while he was in California for work a week ago, and he appreciated how nice and accommodating they were despite their office being very, very busy. Their listening room doesn't particularly resemble his theater, well, at least not the one he's building, so he isn't really sure how the Ascend speakers will sound in his theater, but what he heard in their room was nice, and he got their direct recommendation for a wall mount that works well with the HTM200 SE speakers. So there you go.
Yeah, so there's a Coty Tech one that they recommend. Now, this one is like 5 to 5.5 inches off the wall or off the ceiling, but he was looking particularly for something that he could use as a ceiling mount with the drop ceiling that we've been recommending to him. And this would be just about perfect, because if he installs this onto the actual physical ceiling joist and then the 6-inch depth of the HTM200 SE is in front of that, that's just about perfect for the 1-foot drop ceiling that we've been suggesting. Now, I wanted to mention, because he's also going to have columns that he's building, so for those, you wouldn't want this much depth off of the wall. That would have them protruding out of the columns. So there is a mount from Pinpoint Mounts that they call it a flush mount. Now, of course, it has a little bit of depth to it. But yeah, they basically call it a flush mount, and that'll work really well too. So we're going to have that link at avrant.com in the show notes. 2 good ways to mount your HTM200 SE speakers from Ascend.
And probably many, many other speakers as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Just because we mentioned them for these 2 that exact speaker doesn't mean they're not going to work for yours. So anyways, here's his questions. He's getting into the nitty-gritty when it comes to speaker placement, and even create a spreadsheet for himself so he can organize exact angles and such. For the front, left, and right speakers, we said to put them just to the outside of the projection screen, so it's a 10-foot wide screen and 12-foot seating distance to the primary front row will create a 45-degree field of view. Okay. But with the second row 6 feet behind the front row, the angle created there is only about 31 degrees. So should he spread the front, left, and right speakers further apart? Should he make them perfect for the front row of seats and not worry about the second row? Should he try to find some sort of ideal middle ground, even though it's impossible to have a second row at 22.5 plus or minus degrees and the front row at a plus or minus 30 degree angle? Either the second row is a bit too narrow, the front was a bit too wide. Okay. I feel like there's some confusion happening here, because the field of view has to do with how big the screen is to your eyes, and your speaker placement has to do with where the speakers are in relation to your ears.
Yeah, but we were saying, since the screen that he's going to have is creating a 45 degree field of view,
right,
if you put the speakers just to the outsides of that, you're guaranteed to be within the plus or minus 22.5 to plus or minus 30 degree to the left and right of center
right,
that Dolby recommends, because you already know that's 45 degrees, so if I'm just to the outside of that, I'm definitely within, 22 to 30.
But also just to the outside of that, you're all your seats just about are between the front left and right
between
speakers.
The front left and right.
That's really correct. What we're looking for here, at least in my mind. I don't know what row you're going to prefer. So if you want to cheat them one direction or the other for that row, fine. But the reality is, if it's got to be outside the screen, clearly. But I would not want them too far apart. You know, you get them way out into the corners, way to the side walls, you have a real hard time with imaging, and then we'll have to worry about Atmos and other stuff that's going to come up. I think right to the sides of your screen, you know, not too much further out than that, is about perfect. It puts them outside both your two main rows of seats. They're outside of that, so you're sitting within them, so they could create a phantom center if they had to, which they won't, but there will be some panning that goes on. So I think just to the outside of the screen makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. Not only that, if you go to a commercial movie theater, think about that. If you're sitting in the front row, they're way too wide for Dolby spec. And if you're sitting in the very back row of a commercial movie theater, they're too narrow for Dolby spec. Yeah. There's only that range in the sort of rear third of the theater where it's actually within Dolby spec. So, I mean, you know, yeah, one of your rows of seats, you know, it might be a little bit too narrow, and then in the very back row for your overflow seating, it's gonna be too narrow to hit Dolby spec. But we're concerned with the sound matching the image, and your left and right front speakers having the seating area contained within the boundaries that they create. You can do that just by having them to the outsides of your screen. So no reason to go, you know, if you want to go a little bit wider, that's also fine. But no reason to push them right out to the side walls just so you can try and hit 22.5 degrees for your second row, which isn't even your primary row.
Right. So similar questions for the Atmos speakers with the ceilings at 10 or 11 feet or so. Where precisely should he position the 4 overhead speakers? If he only considers the front row, he came up with about 5 feet in front and 5 to 10 feet behind. But that means the top rears are either directly above the second row or possibly getting very close to the back wall. Since he needs to run speaker wire install mounts, he needs to work out the placement quite precisely. What's our take? I feel like 5 feet in front sounds a little too short.
Well, it's just about right. I mean, that puts you at the 55-degree elevation angle for.
Let me tell you how
fronts.
I would do it. I would place the top, the ones that you're going to call top fronts. I would place them exactly where they need to be for the front row. Yep. Then I would take your top rears, and I would see where they're supposed to be, and cheat them back far enough so they're at least behind the second row.
Yeah, I mean, I would put them just barely behind the second row, because you do have, as far as the elevation angles say to be, they should be between 5 to 10 feet behind your front row. Now, your second row, you said, is 6 feet behind your front row. So if you put these top rear speakers, let's say 7 feet behind your front row, then they're within where they ought to be, according to the elevation angles for your primary front row, and then they're also still a little bit behind your top rear speakers. What's so funny?
Every time you say it, it sounds like you're saying "rut row." Like, okay, Scooby. I'm sorry. It's your voice. It's killing me, man.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I would put them just like a foot behind your back row. That's what I would do.
I agree with that. So just a technical curiosity, since he's going to have 2 pairs of side surround speakers, one for each row of seats, we said to wire them in series rather than parallel. He understands that doing so means doubling the impedance, which should create an easier load on the amplifier, versus having the impedance if you wire them parallel, which would create a more difficult load. But you never get anything for free, right? So what are you giving up when you wire in series and double the impedance? I don't know. I don't think you're giving anything up. Does it make it a little bit harder on your amplifier?
You need a little bit more voltage gain. That's what you need. You need a little bit more voltage gain. So if you think about, Ohm's law, right? So watts is volts times amps divided by ohms. That's how you figure out how many watts are actually doing work. And if you just think about all the little electrons marching in a row, you know, just visualize that that's what they're doing. They're actually going back and forth. They're vibrating back and forth. It's an alternating current. They're going one direction, then back the other direction. So if you put that through one speaker, you got however many volts times however many amps going through 8 ohms, and that's doing the work to create the output that you wanted through one speaker. Now, if you put a second speaker beside that first speaker in series, all the electrons are still going in one little row, back and forth, back and forth. But now you're making them do, it's not really double the work, but you've doubled the impedance. You've made it more difficult for them to march through the two speakers back and forth than just one speaker. But it's the same number of electrons moving back and forth. You haven't doubled the number of electrons, same amps, therefore, number of electrons, but they have to go through two speakers instead of one. So you got to boost the voltage a little bit. Now, it's not a doubling of voltage because you didn't get nothing for adding that second speaker. You got more output for adding that second speaker.
That's true.
But you only got between 3 and 6 decibels of output. A true doubling would be 10 decibels of output. And you're not getting that. You're getting between 3 and 6, depending on how close the two speakers are to each other. So you have to boost the voltage a little bit more force. Now, if you wire them in parallel, now you need twice the number of electrons. Each speaker is drawing the same power as before, but you have to feed them independently. Like you have two hoses going instead of just one hose that's being blasted through two of them in a row. So that's more difficult to deliver more electrons rather than just increasing the voltage gain.
All right, he's got a different room. I guess we're going to fix this one now too. There will be a great room next to his theater, a kitchen, living room, dining room. I guess you got a picture of this up here.
I do. Yep. Yeah, we're seeing the big diagram of his whole house, and then we'll zoom in a little bit to see the living room area with the kitchen and dining area behind it.
So all this will be open to the rest of the house. You'd like to have a TV and 5.1 surround sound, though it won't be for anything critical. And both his wife and designer are saying that's what the theater is for. So it might be only 3.1 or maybe even a sound bar. If he absolutely has to. So aesthetics are a very high priority in this room. It's going to have a tile floor. So acoustics are going to be a challenge as well. He mainly wants to ask what we think we should do in terms of speakers. Again, they want a very clean look. So in-wall or on-wall is what he's after. Perhaps something like the Focal Birds. I'm not going to recommend those. But the ceiling is going to be 12 feet high, and they don't want any surround speakers on stands out in the middle of the room or in the ceiling or at all, really.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of hard to do surround sound without surround speakers, but whatever. He's not looking for Atmos in here, so what do we think? Really, we can't put any speakers in the ceiling? Why can't we put any speakers in the ceiling?
He said it's going to be like a kind of fancy ceiling. It's got a whole texture up there, so no speakers in the ceiling. Now, I'm looking at this diagram, and if we're looking at his kitchen area, he's got this sort of L-shaped counter that's going along the walls, the back wall, and what will be the left wall of this room. And it looks like there's a little space in front of that, closest to the couch, and just to the, like, if you're entering this room, he's got a big entryway into this room. Just to the right of the entryway, it looks like there's a little space on that wall, and then the whole wall across from that, I don't know, maybe there's windows there or something that I'm not seeing in the diagram, but it looks like there's... It looks like there's
left corner. There's a hallway, the doorway opening right there. So
I'm
that
like,
wall can't have any. Isn't that the TV on that wall?
There's the TV on the front wall. Yeah.
Right. So that there's no windows there.
No, nothing there. So I'm like, I could see you installing some in-wall speakers they'll be behind the couch, but on the side walls. And I mean, they'll essentially be invisible. You paint the grills to match the wall. You're not going to notice those. So if you really want surround speakers, that's where I'm thinking that's the only place you could put it. Now, I don't know. Maybe there's stuff blocking those locations, so it just can't be done. In which case, okay, you're going to live with 3.1 in this room. That's not the end of the world. So what do we actually recommend for speakers? What's your thought?
Well, it's a humongous room, so that's going to be an issue. We're going to want something that gives them a lot of output. You know what? I've actually been kind of like contemplating this because I keep flip-flopping back and forth. I was thinking something, either going like loud and that can handle a lot of power, or something that sounds really good.
Okay.
And not that those things are mutually exclusive, but the two things that were going through my mind were Klipsch for loud in-wall speakers, or RBH. And RBH makes a lot of in-wall speakers and in-ceiling speakers that are extremely good as far as how they sound and can fill up a big space as well. Now, they're pricey. They're not cheap.
Really high power handling, so they're not super efficient, but you have a really beefy amp driving them. They can absorb a lot of power to play loud that way.
And I kind of almost want to say, I almost want to say 2.1 here, to be honest with you. I don't think I mean, it looks like from where he's sitting, it's like it's sitting awfully close. But my guess is that this is never going to be for critical listening. This is never going to be.
No. It's not. He's like, it's casual. It's non-critical. They're going to have a TV in here, so he wants some half decent sound.
Right. And I think like RBH, and there's tons of them out there, so you'd have to look to see what fits into your budget. Any of them will do, more than likely. But RBH would be if you're looking for sound quality, that's where I would go. You might have to get an amp for it, but I think it'd be worth it.
Now, I would say an alternative to RBH would be Kef, because Kef makes some really nice in-walls that are pretty efficient. They're not like Klipsch efficient, but they're pretty darn efficient and have some nice high power handling. So RBH and Kef, very good sound quality, high power handling. Those could work quite nicely. And I'm going to point you to HSU, because HSU's in-wall horn-loaded speakers, my opinion is that they sound a little bit nicer than the Klipsch's. They're not as efficient as the Klipsch's, but they are horn-loaded, and those can take 400 watts. So they've got the combination of like 92, 93 dB efficiency and able to handle up to 400 watts. And they're this horn-loaded thing, which might help a little bit with your room acoustics too, having that little bit more directional sound.
Yeah.
So if you were going to consider Klipsch, I would definitely consider HSU as an alternative. They're probably less expensive too, on top of it all. And then RBH and Kef would be good installer choices for high sound quality.
Yeah, I would, for me, I don't see any reason for you to even suggest an on-wall option, unless it's an on-wall option that they like. You should be looking at only in-walls.
Yeah, for this purpose, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason for you to start, an argument or a discussion. I don't see any on-wall options that are so phenomenal over the top of what you can get in-wall that I'd even go down the path of, well, hey, this one's an in-wall, but it's okay, but this other one's so much better. No, not for what your purposes you're using this for. If you were trying to create like a perfect home theater experience and that, I could maybe make the case for other things. But in this situation, I think in-walls are the way to go.
I agree.
So he asked, lastly, what should he do for a subwoofer in this open space? He's not looking to pressurize the entire house, which is good.
Yeah.
Placement is a big concern. All of the gear will be in a dedicated equipment room, so no big box sitting up at the front of the room. So maybe put the sub beside the couch to double as an end table. Do we have any ideas? And yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to end up being, based on my reading of these questions today, a theme today, is putting the sub right next to your couch. In this application, it makes the most sense. And I would actually buy it based on size more than anything else, because you're never going to get big enough to pressurize the space, nor would you want to. It would be absolutely uncomfortable to be in this house. It would be nice
if it's not going to break itself trying that.
That is true. That
would be nice.
That is true. But having it close to your seating position and use it as a coffee table or end table or something like that. I think they make a terrible coffee table, but an end table I think would work.
Coffee table, not an end table. That'll be all right.
Unfortunately, a lot of these boxes are big and ugly, so there's that to consider. But you can always just drape some fabric over the top of it that looks like that's basically speaker grill fabric, but or it's acoustically transparent. Just throw it over the top of the thing, and then some doilies and make it nice or something.
So I have a specific suggestion for you. I don't know if you're gonna like I think it's $1,600 price tag.
Ooh, that's pretty pricey.
But Power Sound Audio has a model called the S3000i. Now that's actually two 15-inch drivers in a sealed box with a dual opposed configuration. So the drivers fire, if you're looking at it head on, they're firing out the left and the right sides. Now, why on earth would I recommend this thing to you? Now, first of all, it's got enough output that it's not going to fully pressurize this space, but it'll handle this space. The sealed design means you're not going to get crazy, ridiculous distortion hurting things. So that's a help. What I like about this is if you are going to use it as an end table, one of the things that always bugs me about using a subwoofer as an end table is you can see the amplifier on one end. Well, this one, since it's got this dual opposed design, you put the amplifier facing your couch, and then all you're seeing are the grills on the front and the back and the box for the rest of it. And this particular model out of Power Sound Audio, most Power Sound Audio subs are just plain black texture, but this one has finish options with wood style finishes. I don't know if one of their wood options is perfectly going to match the rest of your decorating, but at least it gives you a chance that it
ups
might.
the price to $1,800.
It ups the price. So yeah, the price tag is high, but it's a really nice sub that ticks all the boxes you might look for. And it's, 22.5 inches tall, which I think is just about perfect for an end table.
18 inches by 24 by 22.5, and it's 110 pounds.
Yeah, so it's not gonna move from the spot where you put it.
You ain't lying, Haas. Ain't going nowhere. Yeah, that's a good option. I'm
just trying to tick all the boxes I could think of. Now, I wanted to mention, Bill sent in some more questions. We're going to get to those next week, Bill, because they came in kind of late. We got a ton of other questions as well, and I know he appreciates that. But one thing he asked in his new group of questions is, since he's going to have this central equipment closet and everything's being wired, and he isn't totally sure, and we got, they just talked about this HDMI 2.1 stuff, and who knows, right? I want to say to you, conduit. Don't try to predict the future. Don't try to run, fiber optic cable everywhere. You don't even know what the terminations need to be. If you're like, oh, I'm going to run 4 pieces of Cat 6, A cable to every single room, like conduit. Run conduit anywhere. Pull the cables that you need later. That's my suggestion on that front.
All right. Chris. So Chris's home theater space is wide open to his kitchen, dining room, and a hallway. Previously, he had set up 2 Samsung 10-inch subwoofers in diagonally opposite corners of his theater area, but he wasn't satisfied with the bass. We cautioned him that he would probably need much higher output subwoofers to pressurize his open space and really feel a tactile thump in his chest, but he has size constraints, and he was thinking the SVS PB1000s would be as large as he could go. That's pretty small, to be honest with you. He got a third matching Samsung 10-inch sub, so based on advice to other listeners, he tried incorporating it into his system and repositioned all 3 subs. He put he put a subwoofer on either side of his primary couch, which is up against his back wall, and the third sub went into an alcove towards the front of the room. To his delight, he confirmed this with room EQ wizard measurements, that he has no gigantic peaks or nulls across his 3 primary seats now, and the response across the other 3 sideways facing seats is actually pretty consistent. More than that, he is feeling tactile bass in his chest without even turning the volume up to reference. Although if he turns it up nice and loud, he does get a bit of distortion from time to time. Yeah, I bet he does. Overall, though, adding the third sub, being careful with the placement, and doing measurement and calibration made an enormous difference, and he wants to know how. The 2 subwoofers in diagonally opposite corners sounded and felt nothing like this. And we always say that adding more subs doesn't really increase the output level. So can we explain why these changes made such a massive difference in this case? First of all, let's look at if we transpose this correctly, you put them in diagonally opposite corners of your theater area.
Yes.
That is not the entire area.
No.
See, when we say diagonally opposite corners, we mean of a rectangular room that's enclosed. That means that the entire air volume, you are in diagonally opposite corners. That does not work if you're L-shaped. That does not work if you have hallways, or as well. That does not work if you're open to the rest of your house. Just because you're over one corner of your dining room area does not mean this sounds like, well, we're only supposed to stay over here, so we stay over here. We don't go over there.
It's important to message, though, because to clarify that, because we do say this diagonally opposite or opposing walls, midpoints of opposing walls. We say that so often that sometimes people oversimplify it down to, they said put it in diagonally opposite corners. It really depends on the shape and the size of your room.
We say it so much sometimes we forget that we have not specified that's in the enclosed room.
Yeah.
Now, so there's a couple things that you've asked here. So that's the first answer. The answer is, why did the opposing corners not work? Because they weren't really opposing corners. But that's okay. Second question is, how am I now feeling tactile bass? How did this all happen? How did this happen? You got lucky. All right, to begin with.
There's a little bit of luck involved here. Yep, that's absolutely the case.
But on top of that, you have got 2 subs on either side of your couch. And how are you feeling tactile bass? They're right next to you. They're physically, the air is moving much closer to you than it was when they were maybe in opposite corners. And it could very well be shaking that couch. And that's what you're feeling. Yeah,
there's like some actual physical movement going on potentially. But more than that, having the 2 subs on that back wall and your seat on that back wall almost guarantees you're sitting in a big old hump right there. Now, if everything is in a hump, That's okay. Right?
It all looks the same. That's right, when you take the measurements.
Everything got boosted by around 9 decibels. That's significant. That's a lot louder, and everything kind of got boosted that way. Now, if you only did that, if you only had your couch on a back wall and 2 subs on the back wall, it's still going to be crazy uneven. You did luck out in that the 3rd sub up at the front of your room somehow managed to cancel out the worst nulls that you might have otherwise had in that situation. There's some luck involved there. But you said careful placement, you measured, you did adjustments, you calibrated. That's how you got to this pretty uniform, no gigantic peaks or nulls, something that can actually be EQ'd. And that's really important. You know, prior to that, with this other placement, even though it was diagonally opposite across your theater area, but not across the entire room, you probably still had some really uneven, you had some big peaks and dips. If you had a dip of any sort in that hit you in the chest 40 to 60 hertz type of area, then this could be a massive sounding difference, a massive feeling difference without the subs actually producing any more sound, just, you know, completely on their own.
I would venture to say if you took and got more capable subs and put them in these 3 locations, you would find different results.
It's possible,
I would venture to say that.
Ones that are playing lower.
Exactly. Once you start playing lower, things are going to get a lot more squirrely. On top of that, whatever deficiencies your Samsung subs, which when we think of Samsung, subs is not exactly the first thing that comes to mind. Whatever deficiencies they may have, your placement could very well be overcoming them right now. You get a sub that's flat, that plays flat all these frequencies, you might find out that you're having many more issues. So thank your lucky stars, enjoy your tactile bass, and don't move anything. Like ever. Don't move anything. Don't move anything. You know? Okay, so he bought some of the SVS SoundPath isolation feet, and in terms of reducing vibrations and rattles, the difference was really massive in his case. But he also went over to Home Depot and got some soft rubber feet, the type you might put on the bottom of bar stools, and those are like $3 for a pack of 4 to see how effective a DIY solution would be. He couldn't really tell any difference between the $50 SoundPath feet and the DIY feet, so he wound up returning the SVS feet since they cost so much more. So maybe we should let listeners know there's a much less expensive solution. Hey, Rob lets people know about less expensive solutions all the time. It's called a blanket.
Yep.
You could have spent nothing and take a blanket you're never using and put it underneath both of these, all 3 of these subs, and came up with the exact same results. There's nothing magical about the SoundPath isolation feet. No. What's magical is that you can add them to any sub, and it doesn't change their look so much. It gives them, you know, you're just basically swapping the feet out, and you're able to move them around, and it doesn't look goofy. So that's part of what you're paying for, is the convenience of that, and making sure that you know they're actually going to work. But yeah, you're right. There's a ton. There's some pillows. You got some pillows. Throw some pillows underneath there too. That'll work.
How about mouse pads?
Mouse pads. How many times do we have to say mouse pads?
I like mouse pads for speakers. For speakers, I think that's a great solution. Yeah. No. Yeah. There's no reason you have to spend $50. You definitely don't have to go to. I'm so angry at Auralex for like the prices on their grandma risers are ridiculous now. Absolutely insane. I'm so angry about that. So yeah, no, DIY solution. I mean, as long as it looks okay to you, you absolutely don't have to spend a ton. You need something squishy enough to be squishy, but not so squishy that it actually just compresses under the weight of whatever's holding it up. That's all it is. You're just damping it. That's all it is. Yeah.
So on top of this, he's an Xbox One tester who gets access to the earliest builds, preview builds, and reports issues back to Microsoft. He's got a few things he'd like to confirm for our listeners about using the Xbox One X as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player and streaming device. So he says, number 1, or I, or something. If you go into the sound and video settings, you can select bitstream audio output via HDMI, and from there you can select Atmos output from a drop-down menu. Then it's easiest to use the Dolby Access app to make sure every part of your system is properly configured to output Atmos. Under the Blu-ray player settings, you specifically have to let your receiver decode audio. That will get Atmos, CTS-X, and Auro 3D working for any and all physical discs. In-game cutscenes can use Atmos 2 if the game developer chooses so. to do so. So clearly, this is a straightforward and easy to set up thing, which was well thought out by the playtesters over there at Microsoft. Now, I know you are a playtester, and I'm not giving you a hard time because you were not one of the people who was, programming these things. But really, when you set it to bitstream, and all the rest of the stuff should have just happened. This just should not be a thing that we have to do. But thank you for letting us know.
Yes, I appreciate that's a good. That Dolby Access app. That app is free. If you want the Dolby headphone Atmos processing, you actually have to pay a fee for that. So just one thing to know.
So on the lossy side, regular gameplay, Netflix, and Vudu can all send Dolby Digital Plus with Atmos metadata. If the game or movie doesn't use Atmos, you'll just get a Dolby Digital Plus bitstream. However, the Xbox One does always send a 7.1 signal, even if the stream's audio is really only 2-channel. So that's why upmixing on your AV receiver doesn't work, and it's something he's complained about in his feedback to Microsoft. He says it's worth continuing to complain via Xbox user voice because that's how the Atmos and HDR issues got fixed. I've been wanting to go back to my PlayStation 3 for Netflix and these other things, but the reason I haven't is PlayStation 3 looks dark on Netflix, but nothing else. Like unusually dark. Like The Punisher was unwatchable on Netflix because it's so dark. So I haven't quite figured out what's going on there. And when all I have to do when I notice it and go, ugh, I could just press a button, turn on the Xbox, and watch it there. I'm not highly motivated to figure it out. But there's that. Third, the Xbox One X lets you independently set HDR output and color format output. On the Xbox One S, if you set it to output 10-bit color, it automatically sets out HDR 10, and you don't have any choice about it. But on the Xbox One X, you can send 10 or 12-bit color, but still use SDR, or you can send HDR, but do so at 1080p resolution or with Rec 709 color. The point is that Xbox One X is more flexible, which can sometimes be useful for people who use projectors or TVs that can accept an HDR signal, but can't even come close to hitting 1,000 nits.
So that's a little bit like what the Oppo Ultra HD Blu-ray player can do as well, letting you separate the HDR metadata from the wide color data. So that's a nice thing. I didn't know the Xbox One X could do that, so that's a nice thing to know.
I bet you have to set it all manually though, right? It doesn't do it automatically. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
Finally, Samsung and Microsoft announced a joint promotion to bring HDR10 Plus compatibility, and EA posted that the newest Star Wars game, which no one should ever buy, will include Dolby Vision on the Xbox One X after an update. These are talked about as HDMI 2.1 update features, so things look promising on that front. If you haven't heard about the new Star Wars game Battlefront controversy, that you should look it up because it is...
Yeah, no, realistically, they've been taking way more flack than what the actual game does, but whatever.
It is pretty bad. I mean, I don't think they have... first of all, they are taking a lot of flack, but the reality is that this has been going on in the industry for far too long, and it promotes a culture. It essentially incentivizes spending money and gambling for what is essentially gambling. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a thing in video games called loot boxes, and loot boxes are you open the box and your rewards are randomized. Now, when these things first started showing up, what you got out would be something trivial, maybe a new costume or a piece of gear that doesn't change how the game functions, but in many ways it's just an aesthetic thing.
Sure.
So it's something nice, or maybe it's like extra coins to spend or something like that. It's just there's not a whole lot. Yeah, like I think those of you that played Jetpack Joyride, it's essentially like spinning that little wheel, and sometimes you get some extra coins and sometimes you don't. It doesn't really matter that much. But Star Wars Battlefront and other games have been hiding behind these loot boxes things that are integral to the games. Like you can't get certain characters except out of loot boxes, and some of those characters like include Darth Vader and stuff like that. Things that you bought the game to get, and the only way to get these things is either to grind through the game to get the money or whatever you're supposed to do, or you can pay real money to get it. And the problem here is that these games are targeted towards children. At least Star Wars is, because Disney certainly didn't buy it just to target it towards adults. And encouraging children to gamble or pay real money for things that they don't have real money to pay is maybe someone should have said at EA, hey, let's just pull somebody off the street and see if they think this is a good idea, because they would have said no. And that's why I said nobody should buy that game, because EA needs to be punished, and everybody else who does loot boxes should be as well. Lastly, he says, I guess, is this all been Chris?
This has all been Chris? Yeah.
Okay. So this is the last one from Chris. Have we heard of the Harman Kardon Invoke? It's basically the Microsoft version of the Amazon Echo, Google Home, or Apple HomePod. It uses Cortana as the voice assistant, but interestingly, rather than trying to compete with Amazon, they decided to partner up and make Amazon's assistant a Cortana skill and make the Cortana an Amazon skill. So for $100, Chris thinks it has the best built-in speakers versus the other devices. I had never heard of this, and I've never used Cortana. And I have a computer at work that has it, and I could use it.
Yeah, the Xbox One X who has it too, yeah. Or Xbox One, rather. Original Xbox One.
I do, but I have to plug in my Kinect.
You'd have to plug in the Kinect.
I've never done that. I'm not about to start now. So, no, I haven't heard of it. And I'm sure it'll do just as well as I expect. All that,
yeah, I haven't. I certainly haven't heard it in person. I can believe that Harman Kardon made a better sounding speaker than Amazon or Google. We don't know how the HomePod sounds, but the HomePod costs a heck of a lot more, $350 versus $100. So I like the price. That's $100 reasonable price. Cortana has some cool feature, like especially if you're a heavy Skype user or something. She actually handles that type of stuff better than any other voice assistant. So yeah, there's some nice here, and I think it's really smart of them to not compete with She Who Shall Not Be Named from Amazon. And the fact that we can't say her name on the podcast because it sets off too many devices kind of tells you who's winning that race right now.
Dude, I bought 4 of the Echo Dots during Black Friday. It was like $30. I'm like, I'll find somebody to give this to. I mean, everybody, like people are at my house for Thanksgiving, and we were talking to Alexa to set timers and to do music and do this, and they're like, who are you talking to? I'm like,
But being able to tell Cortana to tell Amazon's assistant to do something, or vice versa, that's a cool way to do this. So yeah, I'm okay with that. I think the language becomes a little bit clunky, but it's nicer than being locked to what only one voice assistant can do. I'll definitely take some clunky language over being locked and not being able to do everything I want to do. So yeah, good on him.
Dan. So Dan wrote us a couple of weeks ago asking what he should upgrade in order to improve his surround sound and sense of immersion. We told him that what's really holding him back here are his room acoustics. His floors are hardwood, and about the only absorbent thing in his room are the curtains he put over the large windows to the right side. If they just hang on the wall like pictures, he can do treatments, no problem. But he'd like to go DIY to save money. So can we recommend the design and materials he should use? Well, we have on our website the Rob W. movie poster design. And he takes you through... Does he take you through how to build them?
He has a link to the design that he used to build the frames and put the insulation in. So it's not in his description, but he has the link to the thing that he did. So
mostly what he's talking about is how to get the movie posters on there.
Yeah.
And frankly, you can't really do that anymore because they kind of caught on, and they don't want to print...
If you do have rights to the images, if it's not a copywritten protection image, then you can still get them printed. So that's okay.
Right, and that's why I'm suggesting this. It's like you can still go to this and say, hey, I've got these images that I want to have, and that's how you do it. But that's the first place you go. You can also go to my DIY absorbers for the less than handyman articles over on Audioholics. It's very clunky, but I'll tell you, I basically do the same thing in here, and no one comes in and says, oh, those are terrible looking things. They're just like, oh, what are those? Like sound absorbers. Oh, cool. Can we watch the movie now? Yes, we can. So, yeah, you can use both those articles.
Yeah, those are fully DIY. Now, I will say, if you want to go kind of halfway between, as in the frame is already made for you, just have to assemble it, and the acoustic treatment, the actual acoustic material, the insulation is already the right size and given to you, and the stuff you need to hang it on the wall is also given to you, and a cover, a fabric of your choice is all there in one package. Both GIC Acoustics and Acoustimac sell essentially kits, right? So they've already made the frame, you just have to assemble it. They give you all the stuff, you just assemble it at home. It's less expensive than buying a completed panel from them. It's not quite as cheap as fully DIY, but if you're like, hey, the time offset of already having the frame the right size and everything like that is worth a couple dollars more, then those can be great options too.
Right. Josh is upgrading various parts of his theater. He picked up an SVS PB12 NSD during their sale, which shipped super fast, he said, and rounded out all his Klipsch speakers setup. So now I guess he's good to go there. He's never had Atmos before, but now he's getting into that. So he asks, are 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays the only way to get Atmos soundtracks, or are there other options for getting genuine Atmos at home? Well, there are some streaming options. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason why Blu-ray can't have Atmos.
Correct.
Except that studios hate you and want you to buy the 4K version and use the 4K version. So can you get an Atmos soundtrack on a Blu-ray? Answer, yes.
And there are quite a few.
There are some out there, but I will predict, and then I think probably quite rightly, that will not last. that it is going to be solely the purview of the 4K discs in the future, because they're going to want you to buy the 4K discs.
Not impossible. Yeah. Vudu does have a number of Atmos titles streaming on their site. Netflix has a few.
Yeah,
it's very limited, but they got a couple. So 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray is not the only way to get Atmos, but it's probably the surest way. and even there, not all of them have Atmos.
Right.
I mean, being DTSX is also fine, because what any receiver you get will decode both, but there are some that are still only 7.1 audio, even on the 4K Ultra HD. So it doesn't guarantee you Atmos or DTSX, but out of them, that's the highest percentage that you'll find. Yeah.
So he's using a 1080p Panasonic Plasma with no real intention to upgrade his display soon. Does it make sense to still get a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player? Well, if you want Atmos, it does. Yeah, I mean, does it make sense to? I think it does, unfortunately. And I know that someday I'm going to have to buy one as well. But if you want to do Atmos and you are worried about that, then yeah, you don't have to, having that Panasonic Plasma is certainly not going to be hurt by feeding it it'll be down converted, but
I would potentially say, since this I don't think this is like a super pressing matter, for Josh, like right the second he's got to have it, maybe wait for CES, because I'm pretty convinced you're going to see a whole bunch of less expensive Ultra HD Blu-ray players with Dolby Vision support in January at CES. Definitely from Sony's going to have something pretty much guaranteed.
For sure.
Because they just added it to their TVs. So, they brought out their player early. Dolby Vision wasn't fully baked for Ultra HD players when they brought out their player. So, okay, their very first one didn't have it, but I'm pretty sure the one they announced at CES will. So maybe hold off just for a little bit, since this isn't super pressing for you.
Right. Lastly, he's trying to decide if a dead-end X3300W is really worth it over a 2300W. It seems as though Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 versus Multi-Q XT is the biggest feature difference. He's just using a single sub, which is a problem right there, and his room is a wide-open loft. So his So his XT32 mostly about the sub EQ HT feature for dual subs. Sub EQ HT is not just for dual subs, but we're going to go on. Or is there additional benefit to XT32 over XT that would make a higher price worthwhile for him? Well, it's got to find a resolution, overall.
It's got many, many more filters that it can apply across the entire audio band.
And the sub EQ HT is not just for dual subs. I mean, it does more stuff in the bass than the XT does. So,
and it's actually a separate feature. It's possible to have XT32 without sub EQ HT, although it's rare to find that. But there were some early Onkyos that had XT32 but didn't have sub EQ HT. So
leave it to Onkyo to just pack just as many features as they can, but
they usually go hand in hand, though. That is true.
They do.
The other big feature difference is the X3300W has pre-outs for all the speakers. The X2300W does not. So if you ever wanted to add external amplification for your speakers...
speakers, he's never adding amplification. He's never going to have to unless he changes his speakers. So
my honest thought on this, though, because, he was asking about Atmos. So both of these are limited to 5.2.2 Atmos. They can't give you 4 overhead speakers. Neither of these can. The 3300W tops out at 7 speakers max. That's it. 5.2.2 is as far as you can go. So I'm thinking, if he wants to get a less expensive, just maybe dip his toe into Atmos, I'm like, spend as little as possible right now so that when you want to go fully into Atmos, you can afford to get one of the receivers that can give you 4 overhead speakers, because you got to go higher up in the lineups to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or just wait. Just keep using what you have and just wait until you're ready to go full 4 overhead speaker Atmos and get your receiver then. Because otherwise,
I agree with that, because I don't think that's the way money works. You don't like buy a cheaper receiver right now and like the rest of that money you just put it into an envelope. Some people do that, and I know that there's lots of financial advisors that will advocate people using the envelope system. It's like, I get my paycheck cashed, I take all my money home, everything goes into its envelope, and then my mad money or whatever I have to spend on what other things, that's what I spend stuff on. If you can do that, if you can actually do that, well then yes, getting the cheaper receiver, the 2300 maybe, or maybe whatever you need for right now is fine. But I agree. I think that if you're going to do Atmos, if you can get, and you think you're going to be able to get all the way to 5.2.4 or 5.1.4 in your case, if you're going to get to the 4, you might as well just get to the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you'll have XT32 anyway, because all the ones that do that in the Denon and Marantz lineups are XT32. So
that's right. Yeah. All right, excuse me. Oh. Ryan, how many watts per channel does a typical AV receiver really need? He wants to start putting together a home theater system, and he'd like a receiver to cost $500 or less. Well, welcome to Accessories for Less, sir. Would Denon S730H be underpowered? His room is roughly 12 by 20 by 7, but there's an open stairway with no door, and he's sitting at 9 feet away from his 65-inch TV. Okay, what you need to tell us is what are your speakers and how far are you sitting away from them? I'm imagining you're sitting around 10 or 12 feet away from your speakers, but you could also be around. No, he said he was sitting 9 feet away from his TV.
Well, okay.
That's not the same thing as where his speakers are. That's why I said imagine it. If you're 9 feet head onto your TV and you go out a couple of feet to the side of your TV, you're extending that. You're now 10 feet, maybe 11 feet away from your speakers. And maybe your speakers are clip speakers. Well, then you could power those with a clock radio. It doesn't matter. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's something that's extremely hard to drive, in which case, yes, it's going to be underpowered. So the rest of the dimensions of your room are immaterial. We only care about how far away you sit from them and how efficient your speakers are.
Yeah.
So
but let's go for the typical, right? He's saying typical. So a typical sensitivity for a speaker is probably going to be about 87 decibels. That'll be with 1 watt. Sure. From 1 meter away. So if you put 1 watt and you're 1 meter away, 87 dB is pretty typical for a lot of speakers out there. Now let's say you're sitting 12 feet away, because that's a pretty common distance. If we go up to 13 feet, that's the same as 4 meters. So in a typical room, every time you double the distance, you lose somewhere between 4 and 5 decibels of output. Out in a wide open field or an anechoic chamber, you'd lose 6, but you have walls, so there's some reinforcement of the sound. So let's say you're losing 4 decibels, because that's pretty typical. So we doubled your distance to 2 meters and doubled it again to 4 meters, so we lost about 8 decibels. So with 1 watt, you're probably getting around 79 decibels of output from a typical speaker. Now, a lot of home releases, they're actually aiming for the average output across the movie to be about 75 decibels and the peaks to be about 95. They're not going for the full cinema reference for a lot of home releases. They're targeting a lower output level. So 79 dB, you're already above what's probably intended for the vast majority of the time with 1 watt from 13 feet away. So you need less than a watt to hit 75 decibels.
I think it depresses people when you tell them this. You know that?
That's right.
I think it's very depressing to know that you only need 1 watt for most of what you do.
And then you need to go up 16 decibels more to get you to the 95 watt peak, or to the 95 decibel, peaks that are usually what you're aiming for in a home cinema. So if you go up by 3 decibels, you have to double the power. So 2 watts, you got to 82 decibels, and 4 watts, you got to 85 decibels. And then if you want to go up by 10 decibels, you multiply the power by 10. So 4 watts times 10 is 40 watts, got you to 95 decibel peaks. So that's a typical speaker in a typical room from a typical listening distance. You'd need about 40 watt peaks to hit what's usually intended for the home release. Now, I can't think of too many AV receivers that are rated than less than 50 watts per channel. So how much does a typical AV receiver need? 50 to 100 watts.
Yeah.
That's what
Which
all of them have.
They all have that.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between one that has 125 watts and the one that has 120 watts? Not a lot. not a lot. Subject. I mean, there may be some differences in there. There could have a bigger power supply, which would make a huge difference. But in the headroom that you have, but the reality is you're not coming close to using any of that.
Yeah. Remember, going from 50 watts to 100 watts got you 3 decibels. That's all that got you. So that sounds like a whole lot more power, but it's only 3 more decibels that you got from 50 to 100.
So if he starts with the less expensive receiver model, can he expand it to 5.2.4 later? Is it as simple as adding an external 2-channel amp? And as we just answered with the last question, it's no.
No.
You have to have the capability built into the processing built in. And think of it this way. If you have a computer that's like 20 years old, can you just add a second monitor to make it be better than what it is? The reality is it doesn't work that way. You need to the processing power is finite within that computer. There's only so much it can do, and it's only so fast it can be. So, hey, if I added an extra, something to it, could it process things faster? No, it can't. And you need to have enough processing power within your receiver to process the 9 channels you're asking it to do, and that has to be built in from the factory at the time of manufacture. So if you buy a cheap receiver that's a 5.1 right now, and you're like, well, I'll just add an external amp to get 5.1.4, no, it's going to be 5.1 forever. It has to have the processing power. And right now, to do that, you need to get all the way up to what, like...
It's the X43 or X4400 in Denon's lineup. It'd be the SR6011 or SR6012 in the Marantz lineup. In Yamaha, you'd have to look at the A2060 or A2070 to do 9-channel, but it can't go beyond 9. It's stuck at 9. If you want to go to 11 in Yamaha's lineup, you have to go all the way up to the A3060 or A3070. They're flagship models. For other, in Pioneer's lineup, it's the top 3 models in the Pioneer Elites. In Onkyo's, it's the top 2 models in their RZ series. So yeah, you have to look, and it's usually pretty high up in the lineup, unfortunately, to go 9 or 11.
Okay. So he's okay with slowly building his system over time. So is it okay to start with just a pair of higher-end bookshelf speakers? Can he live without a subwoofer for a while so that he can afford better speakers at the very beginning? Or should he only consider 2.1 as a starting point, or maybe a less expensive 5.1 speaker package? I have a problem with this question. We're not the boss of you. We don't boss anybody around. I mean, are you looking for permission here? You could start with a center channel. That's called a sound bar. You're more than welcome to start with that.
I don't know how you would set that up. Your AV receiver only allows you front, left, right as the minimum.
I don't know, dude. But you could start. You could try. Yeah, you start with whatever you want to start with. Just don't. If you're going to start with the AV receiver, you're going to need front, left, and right, as Rob said, or some way of plugging both the front, left, and right into the sound bar to make it to the center channel.
I guess you could say you have. I guess you could say you have 3 speakers and then play everything in mono.
Mono, yeah, set it to mono.
That could work. Yeah.
So you could do whatever you want. Oftentimes on this podcast, when people are starting out, we do recommend exactly what you suggest, which is starting off with a good set of bookshelf speakers, or a set of bookshelf speakers that you think are you're interested in. You don't want to spend too much money on them right now, but if you really like them, you're going to move them to the back and get the bigger ones for the front later on.
Yeah,
we have suggested that as well. Subwoofer is going to be the single, aside from just going from stereo to surround, the single biggest upgrade to your system if you do it right. And it's going to be the most noticeable difference. And I don't mind you waiting for this. In fact, I think there's a lot of value in living with a 5.0 system for a little while and then adding that subwoofer and going, oh, I can't believe I was living like this before. There's some value in that as well. It's your budget. You need to figure out what it is that you're comfortable spending. You need to figure out what speakers you want to buy. And then you need to figure out, where that sweet point is. Do you just want to save and save until you can afford the whole kit and caboodle? Or do you want to build it slowly? That's completely up to you. And if you are comfortable building it slowly, then buy a couple of pieces now. But I tell you what happens. It's happened over and over in this podcast. Somebody's like, I'm going to build it slowly. I'm going to get a pair of bookshelves and I'm going to live with those and I'm going to save up money. And like 2 months later, they're like, I bought everything. I got the bookshelves and it was amazing, and then I bought the subwoofer and I'm like, blah, and then I just went ahead and got everything else. Okay. So
I will say though, I mean, as far as giving advice, if you're someone who's like, I've already listened to some higher end bookshelf speakers, I know I prefer them over the least expensive bookshelves that I can find, but I could get 5 of those in a cheap subwoofer, or I could get the pair of the speakers that I like a lot more. My advice would be get the pair that you like a lot more,
Yeah, I
because
agree,
what
100%.
you're getting for, you know, for 5 speakers and a sub in a package for the same amount of money, like let's say your budget is $500 a pair. You can get some really nice bookshelf speakers for $500 a pair. A 5.1 speaker package for $500, that's a significant drop in sound quality. So
Right.
I can't really wholeheartedly make the recommend. Like if you're like, I gots to have me some surround sound and I got $500 to spend, yeah, you go ahead, you get the 5.1 speaker package. But if my advice, you know, if I'm giving advice, I'm like, yeah, spend all $500 on the nice pair of bookshelves and build slowly. Yeah.
Tell you what, if you were in that situation and you were like, I gots to have me this surround, but I really like these bookshelf speakers, I'd be like, buy the bookshelf speakers,
Yeah.
and then start going to flea markets or
And fill it out that way, yeah.
Yeah, just get the rest of the stuff. What's the place where you trade stuff in because you're broke?
Audio
and stuff?
Gone?
No, the places. Come on,
Pawn shop?
you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Pawn shop. I didn't know you were looking for something that generic.
I can't believe I couldn't come up with it. My brain is broken. I'm just, okay. So he says the RSL speakers have garnered some good reviews from audioholics and Sound and Vision, but he's also interested in the Send, SVS, Aperion, KEF, and HSU. He'd like to know the most efficient way to whittle down his choices. Would any of those be a waste of his time to audition, or does he just have to give them all a shot and find out what he likes best? Yeah, you didn't pick anything bad, dude. To be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true.
You kind of didn't. Well, some of them you can get in-home trials for free, right?
That's right.
So the Aperions and the SVSs.
And the RSLs.
Oh, I didn't know about the RSLs.
Yeah,
Okay.
so RSL, SVS, and Aperion, they all pay shipping both directions. So there's really no reason not to audition. I mean, there's the time, right? You do have to invest the time to audition
And
them.
you have to have that charge on your card for that amount of time, too.
That's true. But financially, there's no reason not to give all 3 of those a shot. Now, I would say give all 3 of those a shot. You can almost certainly find KEF in a store. So if they have a good return policy, you can do that. So if any of those really floats your boat, don't torture yourself that there's 2 more considerations out there. If any of them really floats your boat, just get them and just be happy. Because I'm not going to say that any of these is so much better than the others that you must hear them. I'm like, if one of those really satisfies you, you're done. You're done, because those are all good choices.
And HSU all have forums, too.
That's right.
And you can go to their forums and see if there's somebody who lives nearby who will let you listen to their speakers.
That's true.
That's the other thing that you can do. I mean, Aperion and KEF and all those other places probably do as well, but you can actually hear them in your house with the free return shipping. So that's a consideration. That's a consideration too. You tried that. So, but you do have to give them all a shot, or at least some of them a shot. So getting back to his room, he's enclosed it as much as possible, but the way the stairs are constructed, it would not be super simple to install a door at the bottom. What about the top? Can you install a door at the top? Anyways, there are some sort of soundproof curtains he could hang. He found some thick cotton ones that are labeled as soundproofing curtains that he could hang there. I looked at these curtains. You could hang them there. They are very strange curtains. They are heavy. They're called soundproofing curtains, and they claim to deaden the sound by 7 dB.
But they also talk about hanging in front of a solid barrier to do that.
Yeah,
so how much are these curtains really doing? I mean, essentially, they're just acting as the same as insulation. They're really thick and cotton, so they're acting
they have like an
insulation.
aluminum. They have like an aluminum core in them. I'm actually wondering if they might be the slightest bit reflective when it comes to the highest frequencies.
Yeah.
But you could definitely do this. But do not think that this is the same thing as a door.
No,
it's not even close. This is kind of meant to be hung on a wall to help reduce the sound that's as it's going through the curtain to the wall and then back out again. I don't see that this is I know what they're calling it. It's not what it is.
No, the closest thing you could do with a curtain type assembly would be heavy vinyl. I mean, there's the like clear slat ones that you'd find at like a meat packing processing place, you know, or in a big warehouse. Right. But there's also just heavy vinyl drapes that you can get. Now, they're still not the same as a door, but they will prevent more air movement than just your fabric.
But you need these things to be practically floor to ceiling, and you know, it's unlikely that you're going to find the size that you want. And then you have to open them up and close them every time you go in and out of the room, and I don't know, man.
Door at the top. That's the easiest solution.
Door at the top. I can see the door at the bottom is an issue here. It's clearly an issue. It does not work.
You'd have to alter the construction to put a door in there.
Yeah. But door at the top, I think probably be okay. Wait a second. I skipped this question. He has a spare bedroom in the basement that would be fully enclosed, but it's only 9 feet by 12 feet by 7. Is that too small, or could he make that work? I mean, it's not too small if you're the only person in there. It's not too small if it's just you and one other person.
It's pretty close to the size of the room that I'm using.
It's not too small if it's only ever 2 or 3 people down there. Mm-hmm. But it's too small if you want like your entire extended family to be watching a movie all at the same time.
I've fit 3 people into my space, which is like 11 by 12. So yeah, I would set this up width-wise. I'd have it 12 feet wide, so at least you can maybe have a 3-seater couch in there. 9 feet deep. Yeah, don't get too big a TV. Leave a foot off the back wall. It could work, but
it can work.
Three people max, I would say.
Yeah. So if you opt for the much smaller room, which pair of subwoofers would we recommend for that space? Do literally anything at the smallest possible ones? SB1000s would probably be okay.
Yeah, or if you're buying right now, the SB12 NSDs are actually louder than the SB1000s, but they're cheaper. So yeah. When they're on sale for $400 a piece. So
are they still on sale?
They're still on sale right now.
Oh, I didn't
They're still selling them out for $400 a piece. The SB12 NSDs are still available. As I say this, it might not be true by Friday if you're listening to the audio only version.
There we go. Scott loves our podcast. Yay! That's in the Scott. We're scrolling down. Okay, no, I have to answer this question. But even with our 2-hour running time, we don't fill his whole week. So what? That's not possible. So can we recommend other home theater related podcasts for him to try? Just listen to us twice. Listen to us twice. Dude, I've got hundreds of episodes for in the back. I could send you DVDs full of episodes. You could listen to the whole stuff with Dina where I'm like wrong all the time. I don't listen to anything, so Rob will tell you.
Okay, so they're not making them anymore because they got canceled by Twit, but Home Theater Geeks was probably my favorite home theater related podcast other than us. But if you haven't already listened to them, go back and listen to their whole back catalog because there's excellent interviews. And hopefully Scott Wilkinson will be back in the new year with a new podcast as part of AVS Forum. So looking forward to that. But that's one. Home Theater Geeks. There's, of course, the HDTV and Home Theater podcast with the HT guys, which you probably already listened to because that's like the easiest one to find on iTunes if you just type in Home Theater. Entertainment 2.0 and Home On are both from the Digital Media Zone. I really like those guys. That's Josh and Richard over there. AV Forums is from the UK, but they have a podcast, so it's a little bit more Europe and UK centric, but good podcast there. AV Excel, that's Robert Heron's podcast. So they're not very consistent. They come out sporadically, maybe once or twice a month, but you can listen to their catalog. There's the Smart Home Show with Michael Wolf if you're interested in smart home technology. That's sometimes tangentially related to home theater. The CEDIA Tech Council, if you want to get into more of what CEDIA is actually doing behind the scenes. AV Week is, again, more on the custom integrator side of things, but if you want to listen to that. CNET has various podcasts, all tech related, and I like a podcast called The DigiGods. Their website is actually Cinegods because their name came about when they were still part of IGN, but they separated from IGN, but their podcast is still The DigiGods, and what they talk about are all the things that came out on physical disc every week, and Wade Major in particular, that guy is encyclopedic in his movie knowledge, so it's fun listening to him. There, that's my list.
I don't think Rob's going to make it through this podcast. Your voice is just getting tough, dude. Gotta get your soda. Mm-hmm. Robert is new to our podcast. He came across one of our videos on YouTube. Yay. We were talking about using multiple subwoofers and like to know more about the subject. Are 2 subwoofers always better than 1? Is it the case of the more subs, the better, or is it more nuanced than that? Why does it say graphs courtesy of Jim B on here?
Because I found Jim's graphs really useful, and I just want to run through.
I'll try to run through
super quickly. Yep.
Okay.
So
wait, I can answer the question too. Okay. So, multiple subwoofers, we talk about this all the time in the podcast, and you hear me making the joke, two subwoofers. If you only got one, I'm like, oh, there's a problem right there. The reality is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But in an enclosed rectangular or even square room, two subwoofers make for a more even bass response across every seat in your home theater. What this does is it allows your room correction system that is within your AV receiver to be more effective at making everything sound more even. So, for example, when you're taking your measurements with your room correction system, you're going to put one in one chair, one maybe a few feet over to one side, and that. And what it's doing is it takes a spatial average of what's going on. Well, spatially, within your space, if the average is everything pretty much sounds the same, meaning same peaks in the same places, same nulls in the same places, same unevenness in the frequency of response, because that's going to happen in a room. That's going to happen because of the dimensions of your room and how bass bounces around. Those things are going to happen. By having it be the same from seat to seat, your room correction system say, okay, all the seats have a 5 dB peak at this one frequency, across, from, that's this big of a peak. I can then tamp that down using parametric EQ or fur filters or whatever it's doing. But if it sees, oh, well, in this measurement, it's a 5 dB peak, but in this other one, it's a 5 dB null. In this other one, it's flat. And this other one, it's 3 up and 3 down and blah, 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 all the way around. It says I can't do anything with this. No matter what I do, it's going to make it worse for one of the other places and perhaps monumentally worse for them. So I can't touch that. I'll have to leave that alone. Let's see what else I can fix. By adding subwoofers, at least subwoofers that are properly placed within the room, you can make that evenness across seats happen so that your room correction can then go in and flatten everything out so that you get the proper response. Now, if you're going to add more subs than two, it's almost always, and I know we had a listener earlier that didn't find this to be the case, but it's almost always the case to go in even numbers. So you're going 2s, 4s.
Well, again, that's primarily for a rectangular room.
Right.
Once you start going into oddly shaped rooms,
then all bets are
change.
Off. Yeah, all bets are off. So if you're in that's why I said that at the very beginning. This is for an enclosed rectangular or even square shaped room. Once you get into L shapes or open to the rest of the house, then all bets are off and it becomes more of a trial and error thing. And adding multiple subs doesn't necessarily fix problems quite as easily as it does in a rectangular room. Sometimes a single very large subwoofer in a very large room will give you the response that you need as long as you can put it in the right place.
Yeah, so when you have one subwoofer, though, you are limited. So I'll be showing Jim's graphs because they were very helpful in demonstrating this, but here's an example where a single subwoofer resulted in a response where, there are 3 traces here, a red, green, and a blue trace, and each trace is wildly different from each other. In some places, there's a big peak. At the very same time in another seat, it's a big null. And that's the same frequency, just at 2 different seats. And with one subwoofer, there's
How come I'm not seeing this? Are you showing this?
Because I'm not showing it on this live feed. It's in the proper feed. It's on.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a different feed. I was looking for the graphs. Go on.
So you saw them a couple weeks ago.
I did.
So yeah, that's what happens when you have one subwoofer, and that's all. How can you possibly EQ that? If you boost one section, it's going to be cutting another section that's already too low and vice versa. Now, as Tom said, if you have one subwoofer and you place it very carefully, you can actually get a pretty good response. There, I've switched to the correct graph now. This is a pretty good response, but there's one section where it's going up in one seat and down in another. And this was carefully placing one sub, and if you only care about one seat, you can make that work pretty well. But if you care about more than one seat, it's unavoidable. There's going to be somewhere in the response of the subwoofer where one seat is going up while another one is going down, and you can't do anything about it. Now, when you get to multiple subs, if you carefully place them, and you carefully place 2 subs, and you adjust the phase a little bit, you can get some pretty darn overlapping graphs regardless of which seat you're sitting in. And once they're all overlapping in uniform like this, you can EQ that really effectively, because now when you boost or cut a frequency, it's happening in all of your seats. But it's not a guarantee. Just putting 2 subs in any room willy-nilly, you might improve the response, but it still could be uneven from seat to seat. So It's a combination of what's your room shape, careful placement, but one subwoofer always limits you. Whereas if you have more than one sub, you can improve what's happening across your multiple seats. Is it just a case of the more subs, the better? No. Once you go past 4 subs in pretty much any room, you're just overcomplicating things. You're not really going to be improving things beyond that. But up to about 4 subs, you can continue to get gradual improvements, but the step from 1 to 2 is the gigantic step. So that's why we're always saying 2 subs.
So he's been using a Sunfire True Subwoofer Mark IV for about 15 years. It's a true sub, not like the other ones. They're all fake. Fake sub. And he's been happy with it. But now we've got him questioning things. Would more subwoofers added to a system need to perfectly match a Sunfire? Would it be okay to add something like a SVS PB1000 to what he has? Yeah, subwoofers are not like speakers. Speakers, you need to have timbre matching across the different speakers. If you take a speakerphone manufacturer and you try to pair it with another one, it could sound wildly different. Subwoofers are not in that same category. First of all, they're playing sounds for the most part, you have a really hard time hearing. I mean, you can hear them, but they are non-localizable because your brain's just not wired to localize them that well, and a lot of the sounds that we're most worried about are actually subsonic. That's what we call them, subwoofers. They're playing below the range of our hearing. So as we come down, as we get into the subwoofer range, you're more worried about performance and depth of how deep they go, more so than you're worried about whether or not they are timbre matched in any single way. So as long as you have a well-performing sub, you can match it with your Sunfire. Now that Sunfire, I looked it up, but I can't remember what it is.
It's a sealed 12-inch with a 400-watt amplifier, 600-watt peak.
Right. It seemed like a real capable sub from what I saw. And Sunfire has had a very good reputation over the years for subs, and I have no doubt that you've had a very nice sub for these use. Now, which you didn't tell us anything about your room, so we don't know for sure. But I'm going to assume you're in a room with a door that's semi-rectangular. If that is the case, yes, you can match another sub with that. And we've been talking about the sale going on in SVS for the NSD 12s, 12 NSDs. So you're looking at a PB1000. I mean, that's a big. Well, first of all, since you're new to the podcast, build a box. Do not take those. Your Sunfire.
We're saying build a cardboard model using the dimensions listed on the website,
because the ported boxes are significantly larger than you will expect. Okay, you will look at them, you will hold the tape measure up in your room and say, yeah, that fits in there, no problem. That'll be fine. You get it, you're like, holy crap, this is a big box. Build a cardboard box to the dimensions of the subwoofer if you're going to go with the ported design. The sealed designs from almost every manufacturer are a lot more manageable. So if you're going to go with that ported one, first of all, go with the PB12NSD because it's cheaper and it gives you more output. But you could go with the sealed one as well.
Yeah, the SB12NSD that's on sale for $400 is almost a perfect spec match for that Sunfire True subwoofer. It's very similar. So in terms of price and size and capabilities, that'd be an excellent match. Yeah, we don't want subs that are wildly different from each other because they're being fed the same signal. So you want them to respond similarly, at least, because they're getting the same signal. You don't want one literally playing sounds that the other sub just can't play. You know, that's too much of a mismatch.
Well, I mean, think of it this way: if you do that, and this happens sometimes, we have somebody who's like, "Oh, I've got this subwoofer that I got with my home theater in a box set up." You're like, "Okay, first of all, it's not a subwoofer. Okay, second of all, it's not getting very low. You know, you'd be lucky if that thing's like breaking 40 hertz. You know, it might get down to 35 on a good day with the tailwind or whatever." So when you try to match that with something like an SVS or any quality sub, they're going to go down, past 30 for sure, easily into the 25 range, and some of them for similar money are going to go, subsonic, below 20 hertz. So that means that you've gone from having one sub that was not very capable to having two subs, one of which is not very capable and is cutting off at around 40 to 35 hertz, and then you're back to having one sub again from that point lower. So that's what Rob is saying. Now, I've got no problems if you've got the Sunfire and you get another sub that can play 5 or 6, maybe 10 decibels lower, or frequencies lower than hertz lower than your Sunfire. I'm not so worried about that. I am worried when you're trying to pair something that is completely incapable with something that is totally capable. Infinite Gary. So Infinite Gary wants to know what causes motion blur. If you go back to a good CRT like a Sony Trinitron, we didn't see blur. LCD TVs seem to always have struggled with this and looked blurry. Plasmas didn't blur, but OLEDs have a little bit of blur. His DLP projector has no blur whatsoever, but now his whatever that Sony one is, DILNA, whatever it is, Lycos,
JVCs,
yeah, the
liquid crystal on silicon anyway. Yeah.
Has a teensy bit. So why? Okay, so the reason for motion blur is how fast the image is on the screen.
Yeah, they call it pixel response time.
So a CRT or a plasma, you get a flash, and that image flashes up there and then goes away, and then it flashes again, and it does that 60 times per second, 60 hertz.
The plasmas did it 600 times a second.
Right. So that refresh rate can be very, very fast, but the key here is that there is time between the flash and the second flash where it's essentially dark. The problem with the LCDs is that the image stays up there and then it tries to switch it very quickly from one image to the other, and there isn't that sort of black in between. Now, the reason why this makes a difference, your brain can puts together those quickly flashing images, puts them together as actual motion. Whereas with the LCDs, because that image stays static up there and then tries to go away and comes back real fast, there's always this little bit of holdover as your eye is seeing a bit of both images at the same time. It's seeing a bit of both, and that's where your motion blur comes in. I read an article, oh God, it must have been 8 years ago, of why LCDs are always going to have motion blur.
It's unavoidable.
It's unavoidable based on the way the technology works.
Yeah, liquid crystal displays, liquid crystal on silicon, and OLED are all called sample and hold displays. The image goes up, it stays there until the next frame. Whereas DLP, CRT, and plasma, they all flashed the image. So it's this little flash, and they actually, to make an image brighter, they go flash, 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 flash. And that's how your eye sees it as brighter, as opposed to it just being this brighter image and held there. It's just like it flashes at you more times, sending more photons out of the screen. So yeah, that's there's that. And then why is LCD worse than liquid crystal? Why is liquid crystal on silicon worse than OLED? That's the pixel response time. It's how quickly can they transition from one frame to the next. And liquid crystal displays are the slowest. Liquid crystal and silicon is faster because they're actually doing it twice every frame by its nature. And then OLEDs are even faster than that. They're almost instantaneous, but they're still sample and hold. So it's, are they flashing, and then how fast can they transition from one frame to the next?
Yeah. David. So David got rid of the spiderweb inside of his BenQ projector, but the dust blobs are worse than ever now. He blew more air in there.
He blew more air in there.
Yeah, okay. In his
got rid of the spiderweb, though.
Oh, jeez. Talk about shooting yourself. So, anyways, in this case, they weren't. The blobs aren't green. They're more of a whitish gray. If it's a black background, and a blackish gray. If it's a white background, so the blobs. We got an image up here. The blobs appear exaggerated in this phone pic he took. So they're a little bit.
It doesn't look that bad to your eye, but they're visible. You can see them.
They're visible. So his projector wasn't terribly expensive. He paid less than $600 for it, but some forum members are saying he could dismantle it and use camera lens cleaner on the inside of the lens to hopefully remove the dust. He has emailed ABT, who are close by, to see if they can professionally clean it. BenQ's website didn't have any help. No, they don't. They would not. Do we have any tips to help him find a cleaning service? And the answer is I didn't last time, and I still don't, because I've run into the same problem. If 600, I see you saying I only paid less than $600 for it. That's still like $500, and that's a lot of money to me.
He was hoping to keep this projector for 2 to 3 years, which I agree with. And being that it is a DLP, as we discussed the last time, at least we know it isn't the light engine itself. It's not the actual DLP chips. That's not where the dust is. That is sealed in a DLP. In LCD projectors, it could actually be on the panels themselves, in which case you're like done, you're toast. I don't know what you would do, but here we're pretty sure it's got to be on the lens because they already removed the bulb. It's not on the bulb, it's not in the light engine, so it's pretty much got to be on the inside of the lens. I don't have anywhere specific to tell you, but if you could get in touch with BenQ, it's not going to be on their website, but what you can ask them is, where can I go to get the lens replaced? Now, you don't actually have to get the lens replaced. You just need them to remove the lens and clean it and put the same lens back in. But wherever would be able to replace the lens for you, they're the people who could do this professionally. Because that's essentially what you need, is to have the lens removed so it can be cleaned. So that's the only advice I can offer you.
For his Atmos ceiling speakers, he asks, are the monoprice ribbon tweeter models worth considering at their price, or should you just stick with either the monoprice Alpha series or the outdoor speaker depot models? We had previously mentioned RBH, but he's given up on trying to find them. I don't see any reason why you should go for the ribbon tweeter models. In fact, they're not a good ribbon. That's not. Not only that, but just say they were a good ribbon. I mean, what you're looking for is a very diffuse sound, and ribbons tend to be a lot more directional than that. So I would say that ribbons in general would not be a good option for what you're going for here.
No, get the outdoor speaker depot ones that we said, the MK650s. Get those. That's what you want.
He says the ceiling is 12-inch interlocking tiles. Can they hold the weight of in-ceiling speakers? What the hell is a 12-inch interlocking tile?
So it's similar to a drop tile ceiling, but there's like the actual tiles themselves, they're only 12 inches square, because most drop tile ceilings are at least 2 foot square or 2 foot by 4 foot. So these are like, they're 12-inch square, and they do kind of like snap together. They're really light and flimsy. You don't want to try to hold just your speaker with them. Now, the grid on them might be a different metal grid than your traditional drop tile ceiling, but the answer is kind of the same. You need some kind of bracket.
Right.
So there are lots of drop tile ceiling brackets exactly meant for speakers. They're just a little metal frame. You'd snap them into your 2x2 or 2x4 drop tile ceiling frame, and they just sit there, just a couple pieces of metal with a metal circle in the middle to take the weight of the in-ceiling speaker. I am not sure the specific you would need. You might have to contact the manufacturer of your exact ceiling tile, but if there's some kind of metal grid holding it up, you just need some metal that spans across that with a metal circle in the middle to take the weight of your speaker. But don't try to hang the speakers off of those interlocking tiles themselves. That they can't take that.
Do we have time for this? Tyson.
I hope so.
Tyson and his wife just moved into a new house. His previous setup was just a TV and a soundbar, and he's never had a full-fledged home theater before. He just started listening to AVRant recently, so lots of stuff is new to him. His living room came with an entertainment cabinet built in, and that's where he's expecting to install his TV and front speakers. But the room is wide open, and his wife has vetoed being able to see any speakers or large subwoofers. She got a good laugh when he proposed the idea of dual PC2000 cylinder subs on either side of the room. So I guess we're seeing some images here.
Yep. I'll show the images of the room.
I'm scrolling past the images so that I can get to the words. All right. God, that's a lot of images. All right. The existing entertainment cabinet has a speaker grill section in the lower right-hand corner that's meant to house a subwoofer. I hate those things. But that would clearly impose size restrictions. He was thinking he could wall mount a 65-inch OLED with the entertainment cabinet and then put speaker grill cloth over the bottom section of that large central opening. That could house one very large subwoofer, although he might have to turn it sideways so it doesn't stick out too much. There's also a spot under the sink that is part of the bar on the left side of the room. It was most likely meant to house a mini fridge, but since it's hidden by the bar, you could probably shove a subwoofer in there. Whether we think of this is the best plan of attack. Okay, I have two thoughts on your best plan of attack. One, do not put your home theater in this room.
That's coming up as his last question. So
that's my first thought is find a different room. Second, you need an end table, and that end table needs to be a subwoofer. Okay, and that's just solution to your problem here. Do not. I don't love the idea of putting the subwoofers in either of these enclosures, though you could.
I was actually kind of going to suggest that same Power Sound Audio one would actually fit in that space below the TV. And output wise,
find
it'd be
the space
capable.
bar of the TV. I'm scrolling. Oh, there it is.
Well, I mean, it's on a stand. You can't really see it because he's written some text over it. But
okay.
The TV that's in there right now is on a stand, so he could wall mount the TV instead, and then all that space below it could house a subwoofer. Yeah, that power. I mean, I would point you to Power Sound Audio regardless, because that's going to be the least amount of money for a sub that can deal with this type of room size. Yeah, that's all I got on that subwoofer front.
Who make these entertainment systems should all be taken out and beaten with a SVS cylinder sub, rolled over the new 4000 series. Yeah, I hate these things, but you're stuck with it, and guess what? That's fine.
Yeah, if a sub can't be visible anywhere else, I wouldn't put it anywhere other than directly below your TV.
Yeah, putting a second sub right next to it in that little enclosure is pointless.
And I wouldn't put it in that bar space. I wouldn't
put it in the bar space either. That's just asking for trouble right there. So having the one, I think to the left of the couch is a good place for you to put it as well. So that would be my suggestion. Is to the left of the couch there. I'm scrolling. I'm sorry. There's a lot of words here in pictures. He was thinking to aim for 5.4 is going to end up being 1, but go on. There's no physical back wall, so surround back speakers don't seem to make a lot of sense, correct? Sure.
I'm in agreement with that. Yep.
Between the Denon AVR X4400H and the Yamaha RXA 2070, is there a huge advantage of one over the other? Can the 2070 even do 5.2.4?
Yes, it can do 5.2.4. It can't do any more. So you couldn't expand it to 7.
There's one advantage right there. Now, I looked at the 2070, and I think it does have RSC, so you YPOW with the RSC.
Oh yeah, it's got the highest level of the YPOW correction.
So for room correction, I'm okay with that. So.
Yeah, the biggest feature difference is their wireless whole house solution. Yamaha has MusicCast. Denon has HEOS. I actually, if you're gonna do wireless whole house audio, my personal preference is for MusicCast because it can take a multi-channel signal, like what's coming out of your cable box or what's coming out of your Blu-ray player, and it will allow you to play that very same multi-channel signal out of any of your other MusicCast systems, speakers, or in any room. On the HEOS system, whatever's playing through HEOS, the source has to originate as 2-channel stereo. So if you want to play what's coming out of your cable box in other rooms, you have to switch your cable box to 2-channel output. It won't let you send out the 5.1 Dolby Digital and do that automatically. So if it's down to that, I'd actually kind of favor Yamaha in this case. Other than that, there's not a huge difference to go one over the other. They're both very capable.
Yeah, but you should be looking to 4,300 anyways because you can get it for a lot cheaper.
Well, for cheaper, sure.
Yeah. From accessories for less. The entertainment cabinet has sections with speaker grill cloth for the front, left, and right, and the center above the TV, as we can all see from the image. Yeah. His front speakers have to go in there, and his wife has said. Okay. But so he has concerns. The primary seat would be about 15 feet away, and the left and right parts of the entertainment cabinet are only 9 feet apart. So by Dolby standards, they will be too close together. What should he do? What sorts of speakers will sound best under these conditions? He's been considering SVS Prime or ELAC Unified models, but should he be looking at something else that would be much better? You're sitting 15 feet away. Anytime you get over 12 feet is when we start saying, starts thinking about speakers that are a little bit more capable of putting out a lot of sound for a little bit of power. So you're going to be looking for a horn-loaded tweeter. A lot of times, if you're in the store, if all you had next to you were brick and mortar stores and you couldn't order online, I'd be pointing you towards Klipsch. The Klipsch should be the way to go. Now, the fact of the matter that these things are too close together, well, your option here is either put them in there and they're going to be too close together, or get a new wife. And since that one doesn't seem to be an option because it's not listed here, we're not going to worry about the fact that they're too close together. Too bad. They are what they are.
I'm going to point you to Shoe Research again, HSU. I prefer them to Klipsch for the price and for the sound quality, but similar idea to the horn-loaded speaker. Now, what you could actually do is get 3 of the HC1 center speakers, because those have the two woofers and a little bit more power handling and a little bit more output capability. There's zero reason you can't set them vertically to use as your front, left, right. The dispersion left, right, up, down is all very similar on these speakers. So you need some output, you need some efficiency. I say get 3 of the HSU HC1 horn centers.
Okay. For surrounds, he's thinking on wall. So right wall has French doors and is an exterior wall, and the left side has a bar with the load-bearing support where his surround speaker would go. So installing in-walls probably isn't going to work. He was thinking the KEF T series, but since they're so flat and won't cause too many objections from his wife. But is there a better option than those? This scrolling is absolutely freaking killing me, dude. Okay.
I like the Focal Superbirds for this.
They would be awfully large, but that's okay.
But they look nice. They can play louder than that KEF T series, and they're still very flat. So that'd be my alternative to you. I'm not super opposed to the KEF T series. I'm just a little concerned about their output capability in here.
So does he have 4 speakers over his head? I'm having a hard time seeing this thing.
No, he doesn't have.
Okay,
Not
so
right
but
now.
he's still going to go 4, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's coming up. He's thinking like prime elevations in the front is actually the next question coming up. So
all right, so there's already a pair of PSB speakers installed in the ceiling, but the previous owner painted right over them. The grills are all clogged, and the actual paint covered the speakers themselves. Any point even trying to use them, or should we replace them with something else?
Those are done, dude.
Those are done. Those are dead
done.
Speakers. You have added quite a bit of mass to that tweeter. I have nothing else. You've added
The
mass
previous
to
owner
it.
has killed those speakers.
Those speakers are dead. And I think he probably just paid somebody to come in there and spray the whole house white before you got there, and they're not going to cover anything. So yeah, you can replace them, and they look like a fairly standard size. So there's no reason why you couldn't get something else up there. So anyways, he was thinking he could install prime elevation speakers on the front wall and call them front heights. Should he call the in-ceiling speakers top middles or top rears?
Doesn't really matter, honestly.
No, I mean, they're going to be. It depends on where you're sitting in relation to them.
Yeah, if it's where they are now, those would still technically be called top middles. Top middles can be up to 100 degrees elevation or 10 degrees past straight up. So where they are right now, where the seat is right now, those would be called top middles. But effectively, it's not going to make any real difference. When the Atmos renderer is doing the coding, it's really you're just saying, is it left or right? Is it front or back? So whether you call it top middles or top rears, it's going to come out the same.
So he says, clearly there's no hope of actually pressurizing this big open space. Is pressurization really a big wow factor? There's going to be a TV in this living room no matter what, but should he fight with his wife to turn one of the smaller spare bedrooms into a dedicated theater? If he tries to make all of this happen in the living room, it's going to be a good amount of cash he's dropping. He wants reassurance that he's going to get that wow factor. If he can do that in the living room, given all the restrictions and challenges, great. But if there's no way to make it sound awesome, maybe he can skimp in the living room and focus on a dedicated theater in the bedroom instead. You should totally do that. The amount of money that you're going to have to outlay, I mean, just in subwooferage alone, you're looking at a $1,600 subwoofer. Just to get bass. Not a lot of bass. I mean, you're going to get a lot of bass, but not thump you in the face bass. If you got a smaller bedroom, you're looking at spending $800 on 2 subwoofers that are going to crush that thing. Absolutely crush it. And then you could get everything you want. You know, your wife's like, you can just tell the wife, hey, we're going to do anything you want out here. The rest of the house is yours, but in this one room, I would like to be able to create a home theater that's going to give me the experience that I want. And I'm not going to worry too much. My wife, this room is always dark. I don't think she's seen it with the lights on, but she's like, she'll look up and go, ugh, there's wires in the ceiling. I'm like, yeah, I know. Turn the lights off. We're going to watch a movie. And then she doesn't care anymore because no one comes back here to do anything other than that. So who cares what it looks like?
Yeah,
I mean,
further
I've got
to all this,
spackle on the
I'm
wall
concerned about the acoustics in this room. I bet you're not covering that nice tile floor. I bet they're not crazy about, she's not crazy about the idea of putting up acoustic panels on the walls, even though you could get prints put on them to make them into decoration. But I'm concerned about the acoustics in here. The audio you would get for the type of price ranges that we're talking about. I mean, it's going to be killer compared to a sound bar. It's going to be killer compared to the sound that's built into TV speakers. A lot of people would come in there and be amazed by it.
If you follow our instructions, our recommendations, you'll be amazed. You'll be so happy with what you have. But for a fraction of the amount of money that you're going to spend in this room, you could get a full cinematic experience in a smaller room that's gonna be mind-blowing as far as the difference. It's gonna be better than, like this, what you're gonna end up with, you're gonna go, this is great. I still like going to the movies, but this is great. This is really great. If you get a small bedroom and you let us help you with that, you're gonna say, I don't want to go to the movies anymore. I'm gonna wait till it comes out on Blu-ray. That's the difference.
Yeah, the full pressurization question, just to address that directly, and that actually goes all the way back to Chris, too, because he was saying, like, how did I manage to pressurize this wide open space with 3 10-inch Samsung subs? Pressurization is different from just tactile.
Yes.
Tactile is really cool. Tactile is you feel a thump in your chest when the bass kick drum goes off or when an explosion goes, you physically feel a thump in your chest. That's tactile. Pressurization is a different experience. It is kind of subtle, but it's weird because you probably haven't experienced it before. If you go to a crazy loud nightclub, you've experienced it there. But in an actual full-size movie cinema, even there, it's really tough. Pressurization is like, it's in your head. Your vision starts to blur. Your teeth start to hum. All right? It's
feel it on your ears. It's like your ears feel like they need to pop.
Like they need to pop.
You know what I mean? You're just you can feel the sound waves on you. Yeah. That is a completely different experience.
It is,
than
and you
anything else.
Very well might not have ever experienced it before. Is it a wow factor? If you're into that stuff, it's like, oh yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a wow, and it's not going to happen in this living room. So if that is enough to convince you to try and get the spare bedroom turned into a dedicated theater,
for the price of the subwoofer that Rob was recommending, I will almost guarantee you that you will be able to get every single speaker that you will need for a smaller room.
Yeah.
You'll be able to spend $800 on 2 subs. We can get you, if it's a small enough room, you just full cow bird the heck out of that place, and it's, you'll have the super birds up front, the birds everywhere else, and in-ceiling speakers or whatever you want up there for $20 a pop for mono price, and you'll be off to the races. I'm telling you, that's me. Now, if you really want to have it in this main room, that's fine too. We can make this work, but you're going to end up spending more money, and it's never going to give you that cinematic experience that we're talking about.
So we have a ton of questions left for next week, but I wanted to, can I just answer Heath's and Matt's super quick? Because they're like one-sentence answers. They're down at 16 and 18. Those are the only short ones. Heath's theater is finally being built, so he's trying to get price quotes for his projector and getting ready for installation. His top contender is that JVC RS540, but he's having trouble finding a local dealer who is willing to haggle and stop trying to get him to buy a Sony instead. Can we point him to good sources? He doesn't want to have to resort to Best Buy Magnolia to buy a JVC projector. What about Projector? Not Projector Central. What's the... Oh, it's going to drive me nuts. No, what was the Visual
company?
Apex?
Visual Apex. That's the one that came to my mind. Do
they don't list JVC on their website, so I'm not even sure. I'm sure they could get it for you, but go to AV Science, avscience.com. Now, they used to be the purveyors of the AVS forum, but the AV Science retailer has now separated from AVS forum. But avscience.com, they're like super fans of the JVCs. They give discounts on the JVCs. Go to them, avscience.com. That's where you go for a JVC projector. And the last one was Matt? Yeah, at the very bottom there. For a 6,500 cubic foot space, which subwoofer? 6,500 cubic feet? Big, yeah. How big is that? Is that like my whole house? I feel like that's my whole house. Which subwoofer would we recommend for around $1,000? He could maybe stretch the budget for a SVS PC 12 Plus or the new mono price model with 15-inch, but closer to $800 for a PC 2000 would be nice if it has enough output. So what about the HSU VTF 15H? That'd be a very fine choice. But for even less money... Well, I was going to say, we usually suggest either power sound audio or rhythmic in this for filling up spaces like this. Or that HSU VTF 15H. Yeah, those are the top 3 contenders. But the least expensive one that I would recommend to this type of size would be Power Sound Audio's 15V. So there's not really much reason to not get that one. So yeah, Power Sound Audio 15V. That's the one to get, Matt. All right. That's going to be it for this week. We want to thank our listeners of the week. It's Tyson and Lawrence. Went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and left us a PayPal donation. So thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Lawrence. Was it Tyler or Tyson?
Tyson, shut up.
Tyson and Lawrence, thank you very much for the donations.
Sorry,
just before
Tyson.
you go on, I want to say the names of the people whose questions will be coming up at the top of next week. We got Brian, which is a lot of questions, so that's going to take up some time. And then we got Nick. We've got Chris with another lengthy one, and Andy. So those questions are already on our list, and we got a pile that came in on Sunday, late Sunday and Monday. So those will all be there too. We'll get through them some way. That's what's going to happen.
That's right. Tyson, Lawrence, thank you for listening this week. Also, thank our 36 patrons, including Andy. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on.
Okay. Yep. Andy, thanks very much for being one of our currently 36 patrons, and thanks so much to all the other patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
I want to thank all the listeners who have talked us up to other businesses, including Rob, who talked us up to just about everybody, Ryan, who talked us up to Accessories for Less, and Larry, who talked us up to Gary Yakubian over at SVS. So thank all three of you.
Yeah, Rob, Ryan, Larry, thanks for the support.
And thanks, Tim and Mark, for pointing out our technical issues so that I could get them fixed, which I did. So thank you.
Yeah, I never mind a heads up about that stuff. So thanks, Tim. Thanks, Mark.
All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.